Tell us a little bit about the health equity access, and then you're discussing the inequitable access to chiropractic to the world.
Well, one of the challenges that we have, Alex, is that chiropractors are not evenly distributed over the face of the earth. We have a global population of 8.2 billion people, but over 85% of the world's chiropractors are concentrated in North America, particularly in the United States and Canada. So one of the things that we advocate for is a greater distribution of chiropractors. We know we need more chiropractors globally anyway,
Sure.
but we need them to be more evenly distributed, which is why we promote things like portability, so that we can have chiropractors have the opportunity to move from one jurisdiction to the next. So equitable access, meaning that all people of all ages in all nations can have access to chiropractic so that populations can thrive.
And you had some powerful information about that too, about how the largest forms of disability, like years lived with disability, is right here addressed with chiropractic. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Well, the biggest single cause of years lived with disability on the planet is low back pain. And this has been the case not just in recent years, but over the last 35 years. So since 1990, successive global burden of disease studies have shown that low back pain is the biggest single cause of disability. The third biggest is neck pain. The fifth biggest is other musculoskeletal conditions. So as chiropractors, we should be in that golden spot to be able to tackle this burden of back pain, neck pain, joint pain. And I recognize that this is not all that chiropractors will treat in their practices, but it will make up a huge proportion of our work. So I think we can provide really amazing solutions to global populations.
Well, I loved how you said in your talk, you said, we don't treat back pain, we treat the people. And that's
Correct.
really what chiropractic is about, right?
Correct.
Like treating those people.
Correct. And it's so important to always bear that in mind. Whenever I go into practice and I talk to others, it is how am I going to deliver targeted treatment to the individual patient that's there in front of me?
Yeah.
You know, how do I take account of their needs and their preferences and their individual circumstances? So being people-centered is absolutely fundamental to what we do as chiropractors. And I think for healthcare generally.
Agreed. Unfortunately, I feel like in our profession, we see it so much, right? But it's hard sometimes when we see it in other professions that it feels like they get lost in that kind of not treating the person. And I'm not trying to slam on anybody else on other professions. It's just that sometimes it just kind of, patients come to us often feeling like, no one's ever listened to me like this. No one's ever talked to me about these things. No one's ever helped me in these ways. And I understand, because I'm friends with a lot of other professions that we co-manage cases with all the time. And they're like, we're just trying to move them along and we don't have a solution for that. So we're trying to get them over to you and get them to the right places and working as a team. I like how a lot of the things that you talked about were a collaborative approach.
Collaborative approaches are, it's the way it is. It's the way it is now in every health profession. If you're not collaborating, you will not succeed, essentially. You just won't. And we were talking about whole person healthcare and what that means. And I was talking particularly about the WHO definition of health, which is a complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease or infirmity. And I think with that definition, chiropractors can really grasp what that's all about in terms of whole person healthcare, salutogenic healthcare, not just looking at the disease process, but looking at the individual that's there. We have to move from being symptom-based to being patient-based. Yes. And I think as chiropractors, we have an amazing track record in doing that. And I think that's what accounts for us, our popularity. That's why the satisfaction levels are so high for chiropractors.
Yes, I agree. Because we make that connection with those individuals, with them and their families. We get to know them and know who they are and what they're about. Totally. And that makes such a difference in just a short period of time, right? Yeah. Like we get to make a huge impact in somebody's lives in such a short period of time.
I mean, BJ said, you never know, how far the impact of something you think, say, and do will impact the lives of people, in the future.
What it's all about.
And it is absolutely what it's all about.
Yeah. That's why I like getting together for these things and hearing this and getting to talk about that, because we get to have that greater impact and pick up those gold nuggets from everything else to figure out, like, okay, how can I impact more lives? Yeah. What's the next strategy or the next thing that I can do or be more heart-centered, like you said?
Yeah. And public health is something that all of us can engage with. we can all embrace it within our practices to embrace public health, to help people become more accountable for their health, to be involved in patient education, to advance health literacy. These are really critical areas that we can just incorporate into our practices every day. Because the one thing chiropractors are really good at is talking to our patients.
Yeah.
But let's listen to our patients too, and
Yes.
have that shared decision making, because that's really where it's at.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you talked about the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically goal number 3,
Yep.
which was having good health and well-being to ensure that health and lives or promote well-being for all ages at all, or for all at all ages. Can you share a little bit more about that? Because not everybody had the privilege of getting to sit in and hear. Share a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a set of 17 targets that were put in place by the United Nations in 2015. And the aspiration was that those targets would be met by 2030. A lot of them have overlap, but the one that's most relevant to us as healthcare providers is SDG 3, as you say, to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. And that really aligns with what the WFC's vision is. But it's critical that we not only get involved in that, but we also look at the other SDGs around education, around equity, equitable access to chiropractors and other healthcare professions. And things like looking after the planet and just justice and equity and prosperity for all. And that's what these 17 goals were all about.
So for the doc that's in like daily practice, doing their thing over the table, helping their patients and serving their community, how can they see that? Like, I'm part of this bigger picture. I'm not just this silo like you talked about. I'm part of this bigger picture in relation to the SDG.
Sure. Well, it's really about embracing what it's all about and realizing how you can merge and meld that goal into what you do on a daily basis. I mean, we are all promoting well-being for all at all ages. So by embracing public health, by talking about ways in which they can improve their health, whether it's physical activity, stopping smoking, better nutrition, educating themselves, doing exercise.
Right.
There are so many public health interventions that can be incorporated within everybody's chiropractic practice, basically. And I think now, patients are much more discerning about their healthcare providers.
Yes.
I always say,
Yes.
never kid yourself that they haven't looked you up on Google before they come in and see you.
Absolutely.
And that is really important. And they will be looking for a health provider who is interested in them and isn't just providing cookie cutter treatment to one patient after the other. It has to be bespoke, it has to be individualized, and it has to be person-centered in every facet.
Yeah, I love that. So you talked about the World Spine Care Project, and specifically, I love the story that you talked about with people traveling to come see you. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I just think that it just touches on such the value that people put on chiropractic care and how it is that we get to serve.
Well, World Spine Care is a charity that was started by Scott Haldeman, and basically it was designed to provide evidence-based, people-centered care to underserved communities around the world. So the first project was in Botswana, in rural Botswana. Subsequently, it's expanded to Dominican Republic, to Africa. We have a new project starting in rural South Africa. But what it is there to do is provide care to underserved communities that wouldn't otherwise have access to chiropractic services. And some communities don't have access to health services, full stop.
Yeah.
So being able to go into communities and give treatment to those that wouldn't otherwise be able to access it is something that as chiropractors we can make a huge difference to people's lives. Because of the nature of the countries that they're in, people would travel. They would travel hours, sometimes up to 11, 12 hours in a non-air conditioned bus that would take them for a half an hour treatment. Then they get on the bus and go right back again into their communities. But such was the value that they placed on chiropractic care and the well-being that they experienced through chiropractic care. This is why it's such an important project. And I had the opportunity to work in Botswana myself. It was a life-changing experience.
Well, I love that about the traveling for 11 hours and doing that, just to kind of show the perspective of, all right, if I have someone that's traveling to see me for an hour, for 2 hours, whatever that is, how valuable what we're doing is, because they're passing up all those other people, not in a country where it's not available, but in a big city, they're passing up other docs to come see you because they see your value because just what you said before, you made that care about them
Yes.
as the individual to bring it back to them and provide the type of care that they need, that's necessary, and that they hold up for it. So I love that. So why would you say that back pain has been managed so poorly? You mentioned about in the past, back pain's been managed poorly. Why would you say that for those that didn't get to hear you?
Well, I think that there are so many myths around back pain that are perpetuated
Sure.
through generations
Yes.
and generations. And that's not just generations of health providers, generations of patients. Patients who saw their father lying on a door that they'd taken off the hinges and put on the floor and laid on it for 6 weeks.
Sure.
You know, this was the management of back pain going back even during my career, 30 years or so. It was, it was notoriously poorly managed. There was an overuse of surgery, a vast overuse of medication. We only need to look at the tragedy of opioid overuse in the United States to see how poorly back pain has been managed. Opioids were never really established to be a back pain treatment.
Right.
They were established for non-cancer pain.
Yes.
Or
That's where they started.
cancer pain.
Cancer
That's
pain.
what it was all
Right.
about.
It's all about cancer
So,
pain.
but the use for non-cancer pain has been the tragedy that's just unraveled and magnified. And so, there's so many aspects of back pain that have been provided poorly. So much advice that's been given poorly. This is why evidence-based care is so critical.
So critical.
We need to work on the science, but we also learn from our own experience as clinicians, but also take account of what patients are telling us.
Sure, and I think that's the thing too, is taking into account what the patients are telling us, because obviously the science hasn't all caught up to everything that we see in our practices all the time.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the young boy that you were adjusting and taking care of that had failure to thrive. Can you talk about that? That's a powerful story. I love this.
Well, as I say, it's a story that will stay with me for a lifetime.
Sure.
Did I think I did anything special? No. I just did what I do as a chiropractor, treating a child.
Yeah.
Again, all people, all ages, all nations. And this little boy in rural Botswana with a terrified mother who thought they were going to lose their child. I didn't do anything special. I just worked as a chiropractor. And to see the impact of the care that he received was truly life-affirming and life-changing.
And I know you're humble, so you're saying about, I didn't do anything special, but what you do is so special, right? Like as a chiropractor, you get to impact so many lives in such a powerful way that people just, they're floored by it. And that's
we all
amazing.
do. We all do.
Yeah.
All of us as chiropractors.
Yes, as chiropractors.
It's the gift that we have through our training, through our hands, to really change people's lives. It's absolutely profound.
Yes. I'm going to go back to the team approach care that you mentioned before, because you said, look, this is invaluable. We have a lot of people here that are from lots of different professions, right?
Yes.
So we've got kind of the walk of all of it. And so, which is an amazing way to bring everybody together and do all this, right? With that, how would you find like the best ways of that intercommunication between each one of those, so that you found, because you've had a lot of experience with this, I mean, currently in your practice right now, right, that you're working with a lot of different professions and they're referring into you and they just can't get them over to you fast enough. What do you find is like, this is one little thing that I find that most of the time we miss in that communication with either a medical doctor or some other referring doc? What would you say?
It is communication. It is about communication. You're not going to receive referrals if you're not telling people what you do. One of the things that built my practice, when I was in my early years of practice, was writing to GPs. Writing letters saying, look, your patient has come to see me. This is what I found. This is what we're going to do. I'll let you know if there's anything, if there are any significant changes or we need to refer.
Yeah.
But it's that communication. And I know chiropractors who spend thousands on marketing campaigns, literally thousands, to promote themselves and find the latest trick to promote themselves. The best marketing I think you can do in your community is to write letters to your GP telling them about the patients that you're seeing and how you're making an impact as a chiropractor, and you're lessening the burden for them, because they hate back pain. Let's face it.
Right.
They hate it.
Absolutely.
If they've got somebody that they can trust, and it is about trust, that they can refer to, they will just send them out the door. And if your headed paper is landing on their desk 3, 4, 5 times a week, that is the cheapest and most effective marketing campaign you can launch.
Agreed. then all of a sudden they can't help themselves but referring over to you.
Yeah.
And we do that in our practice too.
Let's make it easy for them.
Yeah.
You know?
We want to communicate so that they know,
Correct.
so that they know like,
Absolutely.
oh, this is where I should send them.
Yeah.
This is a good place. You know?
Absolutely.
And then we build from there.
Yeah, and communication builds trust.
Absolutely.
And it's trust that builds credibility.
Yes.
So it's a cascade system, really.
Yes.
But it starts with communication and speaking a language that they will understand. Make it jargon-free.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
don't use your own jargon. You know, and you wouldn't expect another health profession to use
No.
jargon that's
Right.
unique to them.
Yeah. Meet
in a
them where
letter
they
to you.
are.
Go to where they are.
Yes.
You know, it's the
Yeah.
old Sidney Crosby quote.
That's
Go to
right.
where the
where they
puck
are.
is going to be rather
right.
than where it is.
That's it.
So there you go.
So love it. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this and taking
Thank
the time.
Thank you
This was
very
great.
much,
I know
Alex.
everybody got a lot of value out of it. So thank you.
You're very kind. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you.
Your future starts now. At Parker University, we combine cutting-edge technology with top-tier education to prepare the next generation of health professionals. With hands-on experience and expert faculty by your side, you'll build the skills and confidence to make a real impact. Parker University. Learn it here, live it in every day.
Welcome, everybody. We've been working with chiropractic for 40 years or more, and worked with Dr. Prue for at least 30 of those years
Almost.
in various capacities. And we're here to discuss where Dr. Prue thinks chiropractic is going as far as providing services to the patients. So to start with, why don't you give a little background how you got started, what kind of services you were providing, and where have you expanded those services to your patients?
Yeah, I mean, I started with a background in exercise, so I did my master's and then subsequently my PhD in exercise science. So I was really embedded in that holistic, type of approach. And so when I first started practice, we didn't have a lot of what we had today. So my focus was really on that physical activity piece and getting people to where they needed to be. A lot of sports background. Well, you open practice and things change a little bit.
Yep.
Not a lot of high-end athletes, in my rural hometown of New
weekend
Hampshire.
warriors?
A lot of weekend warriors and, a lot of generalized conditions. And it was interesting because, it really shifted my overall mentality, a lot of blue-collar workers and things like that from what, I was used to even within clinic. And kind of fast forward to today. And, at that same time, I was also in higher education. So I was a professor of sports science and exercise science. And so kind of blended that. And so I had a unique opportunity, to see kind of the latest and greatest of things that would come out, which is why a lot of people come to these sorts of shows or have, really good, sales reps. And so being embedded in that world, being able to, look and see the progression and being a published researcher myself, just really interested in how things came about. And so part of even what I do, doing webinars and seminars and things like that is I get into the nitty gritty,
Right.
So if we look at, when I first started practice, we were treating 10 to 11% of the population. Not much has changed
Yeah.
per se, but different pockets have changed. But what's interesting, and I think a lot of people don't realize that even when, we say that 10 or 11%, the difference is we may be with those people. I've been into offices around the world, and it's unique because I get to interact with a lot of patients, and even with you,
Right.
in talking with, some of the patients. How long have you been coming here? 30 years. Like, what other healthcare practitioner, can say that?
Right.
And it's because of what we have to offer in terms of the overall health scheme. Statistics tell us that mostly people come in because of some sort of pain issue.
Right.
Back pain obviously being the number one, but they stay for many other reasons.
Don't you find over the years that even though the percentage may not have changed, those that are coming are more dedicated and are looking for more than what they used to look for, whether it's just the initial adjustment or you were doing some rehab, but now they're looking at expanding what you can do for them. They want a one-stop place
It's
to go to for everything.
100%, right? So they initially came in for this one thing, and now they're coming back for everything,
Right.
right? Because, we're really good at telling them what it is that we have to offer. And I think that as we've seen, like, emerging technologies within the field, as well as integration within clinical practice, has really expanded,
Right.
the breadth of what it is that we have to offer. I think we've always had a lot of that to offer. I half joke with some of my friends that are other types of practitioners, but only in chiropractic, a patient comes in and you're doing your intake, and what's your chief complaint? Oh, I got back pain, I got knee pain, I got hip pain, I got shoulder
Right.
pain, and what do? We take care of all of that.
Right.
And that's unique, from a profession, and the consistency in which people come back. I mean, if you look at the data, we have really some of the highest satisfaction rates in patient care of any other healthcare practitioner.
Versus them going to any other profession where they may say, for this condition, you're going to go see this doctor. For this one, you got to go, or you got to go to a general, get approved to go to these different places.
Oh, exactly.
Before you even get anything done. So they're being sent all around. So when we first worked together, I would think the late 90s is probably when we first worked together, when you were doing seminars on decompression. That was a big evolution, just to go into decompression. Now, when you look at the last decade, where we're going into things like laser, shockwave, the wind back is an awesome instrument, techotherapy. Are you finding your patients more open to doing these new technologies?
So they're not only more open, but we do more of that in general.
Okay.
And now that referral pattern also gets even larger.
Okay.
Like, obviously we're known for spine, and when we first started working together and decompression was what it was, we got really better embedded at treating those relatively spinal conditions. Most of our states of practice often talk about the adjacent articulations, the shoulder, the hip, and the knee, and so on. And then we can usually extrapolate that we've got all these other things. And that's not even getting into the overall health. And the cool thing is, even prior to COVID, we've seen this constant, trajectory with the consumerism in healthcare.
Right.
People want more from their healthcare practitioners. They want more from health. And so they're seeking that out. And they're not as compliant to just, however I'm being treated is how I'm going to be treated. No, they know that they deserve better.
Right. And you have always pointed out to me, which I always thought was a good response as far as where to go with a particular patient, was, where do you want to go with this? Are you running a triathlon, or do you just want to go in the backyard and do your gardening without pain? And so now you have all these different therapies to tailor the approach to that different type of ending that you're trying to achieve.
Because they're when I hit my mid-50s 2 years ago, it was like, oh, now I'm in this longevity space of what it looks like, what it is I want to accomplish even with my own health, whereas 15, 20 years ago, it was more sport-oriented, right? And so same thing as I've seen, patients transition from different interests or different problems, with our breadth and with these emerging technologies, like with laser and shockwave and Takar therapy, and even with, we're not done with decompression, which has been around for 4,000 years, by the way.
Right.
Well, maybe not labeled decompression, but as spinal distraction therapy, in how that actually influences these other aspects. And it's interesting because in chiropractic, we talked about a lot of these things even before, you know, it hit more mainstream that we're seeing today.
Yeah. And don't you find that as you have more tools in the bag, so to speak, you can, even conditions that you would approach 20 years ago or 10 years ago in a certain way, now you can approach them differently with more patient satisfaction.
So, and that's a really good question. And because sometimes people seem criticized because of the tools. If a carpenter comes to your house or an electrician comes to your house with only one tool, I mean, what would you think? And their response should be, I need the right tool to do the right job.
Right.
And I was on a chat forum over 20 years ago, and it was another practitioner making a comment. If you have that many tools, it probably means you don't know what you're doing. And it's like, well, actually, if you have that many tools, you probably do know what you're doing.
Right.
And the reason is that you need to understand how to apply that.
Right.
And the expansion of what it is that we're seeing today, the literature's there. Number one is how the patient's responding. Right. That's actually how I even really got into chiropractic. My mentor from my master's and PhD worked in the Olympics, and he said, you know, the number one practitioner that's asked when they ask the Olympics, who do we need to bring? It's a chiropractor.
And with the efficacy of all these treatments being well proven and laid out, and when we look at most of the new things that have come into the U.S., has been used worldwide far before we ever used it. Now it almost gets confusing for some doctors to say, where do I expand? How do I expand? You know, what should I get first? Should I do decompression? Should I do laser? Should I do? So how do you approach someone? I had some younger doctors come by the booth today. They've been in practice 6 months. The economics say, I'd like to do all of it, but the economics say, yeah, maybe I can't do all of it. So in your mind, how would you approach that as far as being most applicable to most of your patients?
Yeah, again, another great question. We are highly trained, especially in spinal care, right? And so that makes more sense. If you look at from a market perspective, if we transition from just looking at healthcare to the business aspect of healthcare, and it's like, okay, well, what are the top 10 ICD codes that we tend to see in clinical practice? Low back pain is number one, whether you're a chiropractor or a physical therapist. Studies show that even in primary care practitioners, they see some of their practices are as high as 30 to 40% are musculoskeletal related. So I think if you're just starting out and you're looking for what we refer to as low-hanging fruit, it's spinal conditions.
Right.
So at any one moment in time, there's 1 billion people in the world with a spinal problem.
Right.
And that is a really good introduction into what it is that we have to offer other patients and build that rapport, right? And that's another thing that we have to do, which is another thing that allows us to be as good as we are within the healthcare setting, is we have a lot of trust within our patients.
Okay. Well, we've just scratched the surface.
I know.
But they're telling us our time is up, so I appreciate the time. It is a pleasure.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, Doctor.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Take care.
My name is Chris May, and I am the ambassador for the INVICTA project. The INVICTA Gala is an event held to honor participants, celebrate recovery, and support the ongoing pursuit of effective treatment. The INVICTA project provides treatment to military veterans and first responders who have experienced traumatic brain injuries. The inaugural launch of the INVICTA Gala was filled with familiar faces and warm support from not only professionals in their respective fields, but also the community at large. Over the past year, the INVICTA project has treated 12 service members and have 5 scheduled to attend before the gala, thanks to our incredible supporters. My goal is to raise funds to support 24 veterans and first responders this year. Please join our team in helping us achieve this goal. We would love for you to attend our next gala on May 3rd to experience the amazing support. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the INVICTA project and how we're supporting our veterans. I have Dr. Wright here, one of the doctors at Parker Performance Institute, who are primary provider for the program. So we're going to have a conversation, a little dialogue, and we'll kind of let you guys know what we're doing.
Yeah, so from my perspective, what we do is we initially bring in the veterans. Chris does a good job with his team finding these veterans that need our assistance, and they come in and they meet with our medical team. Initially, they meet with our nurse practitioner who does a workup via telehealth and does a full metabolic sweep, so whatever it may be, whether it be a GI test or a heavy metal test or just basic blood panels. We did all that done initially ahead of time. Once they're in clinic and they start their actual 2-week protocol with us, I'll do the neuro assessment. So I do functional neurology. I do different neurological assessments from eye movements, vestibular function, all of that. And then they see our other chiropractor, Dr. Yates, who will do a musculoskeletal assessment looking at all the aches, bumps, and bruises they've gotten along the way. So that's a little bit of a medical overview of what we do, and we can kind of talk about it. Chris was one of our patients at one point, so he can talk about the project as well.
Yeah, so the good thing about the INVICTA project is I tell all of our veterans and first responders to come to the program with some goals. So to think about the things that you're having issues or you're struggling with. So when you come through the program, the doctors can actually tailor your program to meet the goals that you're trying to achieve while you're there. For my case, I'm a competition shooter, and I was struggling during shooting because multitasking and being able to identify targets and rapidly transition from one target to another, I was really struggling with that. So when we set my goals, a lot of the treatments we're using today were based off rudimentary things almost 2 years ago when I first came through the program. But what I saw out of that treatment plan after 2 weeks was 2 months later, I went and I competed at the national championships, and I took 8th out of over 300 people in the long gun comp. And we had to shoot 11 targets from 180 yards all the way out to 678. And I was able to identify and transition those targets in under 80 seconds, which is huge when you look at the impact that coming through a program. And some of the homework they send you home with and the tools are so simple that if you do them every day, you can maintain that level of competence in whatever skill you're going through. Our main goal is to literally show veterans and first responders that there is a better quality of life. A lot of us put our heads down, and whatever issue we wake up with the next day just becomes the new norm. And we don't realize that, over time, those issues keep compiling and compiling. And what the program does is it builds awareness, and they come out, and a lot of our veterans, they get emotional because they don't realize or did not realize that there is another option. Non-invasive, simple program that can really change their life and their trajectory. It gives them the ability to actually wake up in the morning and feel better and understand that, continue to set goals. There's more clarity, there's more purpose, because a lot of veterans, purpose drives everything. And that's how I ended up here as the ambassador for the INVICTA project. Is I was so moved by the progress that I had coming through the program that I became very engaged even from the outside with finding sponsors, finding donors, building relationships. That when the opportunity came for me to take the program over, I was ecstatic. A lot of us, we wait a long time to find a job that provides purpose. And I love every day coming to work, being able to support our veterans and our first responders and really change their lives. And that's the goal, is to impact them when we have the ability to change their trajectory before they get to a point where that's no longer an option. And I'd like, Dr. Wright, if you could talk a little bit about some of the techniques that you guys use, because that's one thing that it's hard for a veteran to explain, well, this is what we did, which is why I brought Dr. Wright up today, so he can explain to you some of the tools they use to enhance our performance, as we go back out to live a better life.
Yeah, what we try to do when we meet together as a medical team is we try to find, like you said, what is the one thing that individual is really wanting to improve upon, whether that be improving at the tactical games. We just had another individual who does security and has certain requirements for his job that we tried to replicate within our therapies. we have technology at the clinic, and we're very fortunate to have such technology at our disposal in order to really get fine detail assessment of oculomotor function, for example, or vestibular function, or look at autonomic fatigue. Someone may be able to perform something, but are they able to perform it well over a certain amount of time? And that's where we start to work with our nurse practitioner, looking at the metabolic side of things, the supplements that are necessary for these veterans and first responders that can help them get back on a chemical, the chemical track that is good for them from a neurologic standpoint, whatever that issue may be, whether that's tracking something, reducing the amount of sympathetic load on their nervous system, or just getting them moving better with our musculoskeletal professional, Dr. Yates. We're able to do that very effectively because we have tons of very detailed equipment that allow us to have a large impact on what we're looking at and then what the patient is also receiving. And then finding a way to package that into an at-home program that continues for them, and we're at the disposal of them throughout their program as well. So it's really about creating an environment where the individual feels heard and that they feel like they are a part of a team.
Yeah, and I would say to that, one of the key factors in the program is our nurse practitioner and actually getting our bodies balanced. So when I came through the program, I believe Kelly had just come on, and I did not get to experience that portion of it. And the first day I came into work when they hired me, I sat down with her and I said, okay, we need to fix this. Yeah. And I will tell you that in the last 3 to 4 weeks after getting on the supplement program and getting a lot of the issues, I had high estrogen, high insulin, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and I was really struggling just to stay focused every day. And the program that she put me on has changed the game. I'm reacting faster, my thought process is faster, my ability to make decisions is faster than it's probably been in 15 years because we identified, a virus in my gut that I didn't even know I had. And their programs with their labs cover the full gamut of anything you could expect that the VA is not going to cover. It's hard to get your local doctor to do it. And the key is we fund 100% of the veterans treatment through the program. So we cover their medical bill, we cover their travel, we cover their labs. So when they leave with all of these assets in their toolbox, and we keep veterans in our program for 12 months. So they do the initial 12 weeks, and then I reach out to them every month to ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Do you need anything? And then at the 6-month mark, we give them the ability to come back into the program for another week between 6 months and a year, where they might have identified a few other things that they're struggling with, or maybe something else popped up. Because the reality is, a lot of the TBI issues that we have, we'll live with for the rest of our lives. It's just how do we mitigate them and how do we seek opportunities to enhance, what our program as we're moving forward. And that's one of the critical things is maintaining that contact to identify the individuals that come through. And then that's where, if I came back and I said, hey, I'm struggling here, the doctors can take that and tailor that week to focus specifically on that issue that the veteran or the first responder is having, which I think is a huge game changer. When you can come in and identify something, really specific that you guys can hone into. And I know we had one of our patients came back late last year for that reset. You want to talk a little bit about how that went?
Yeah, so the biggest emphasis I think we want to talk about with the program is just how we all work together. We have these different specialties that really coexist with each other in order to make this impact on these patients. So you said about our nurse practitioner and the things that she does. When you have a traumatic brain injury, we talk about the gut-brain axis and how those can be impacted. The hormones can be impacted with that. You talked about your estrogen levels. All of that is really, in order to make the impact that we need, like I can do all the therapy in the world, but if the brain and the cells are not in the position from a nutritional standpoint or a supplement standpoint, or they're not getting the blood flow that they need, then it's really not going to matter because it's going to not last. So having the metabolic side with our nurse practitioner is great. It allows for what we do from a therapeutic standpoint to really hold. And then, like you said, at 6 months, we do a re-up. Hey, how do things look? It allows us to fine-tune these things, especially from our nurse practitioner's perspective, because things change. As we improve our gut function, then we start to unveil that, hey, we're starting to have a little bit more of a thyroid issue that may be popping up. because things start to kind of adjust to the new normal that it's experiencing, so we can start to mitigate and manage those new changes. And then if necessary, we deem that someone wants to come back and do another week with us, they do, and we do another re-exam from a neuro perspective and a physical perspective, and we just keep the ball rolling for that whole year. And it's really a beautiful program. It's something that a lot of first responders and veterans have expressed that there's nothing really like it out there as far as the follow through with what we're trying to do with the program, which is beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that's critical with having that monthly contact, and sometimes it's easy as shooting a text, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, oh, I'm great, but I need to talk to Dr. Kelly, or, you know, I need to talk to another doctor. And just having that point of impact every month to let them know that we're still there, we're still concerned on how they're doing, we're still engaged. And the big thing, you know, that what we're here, I set a goal to come out here. It's the first time that Parker has had an INVICTA booth, and my goal was to raise enough funds this weekend to provide treatment for 3 more veterans or first responders. And we're doing fantastic. I would say anybody that's interested in changing the lives of a veteran or first responder, please come see me or stop by booth 700, and we will talk you through the program and what we're doing and show you some of the things that we have over there that we enjoy to highlight with you know, people that are out here enjoying the Parker seminars. But that's my goal, is to impact another veteran while I'm here for the next 3 days. So please stop by booth 700 and see us. And thank you, Dr. Wright, for coming up here. It was supposed to just be me, but I felt we'd get more out of it if we actually had a dialogue. And then we also have our guest of honor and our veteran of the year here, BJ Keepers, up front. And we thank you for coming out and spending some time with us, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Chris May, and I am the ambassador for the INVICTA Project. The INVICTA Gala is an event held to honor participants, celebrate recovery, and support the ongoing pursuit of effective treatment. The INVICTA Project provides treatment to military veterans and first responders who have experienced traumatic brain injuries. The inaugural launch of the INVICTA Gala was filled with familiar faces and warm support from not only professionals in their respective fields, but also the community at large. Over the past year, the INVICTA Project has treated 12 service members and have 5 scheduled to attend before the gala, thanks to our incredible supporters. My goal is to raise funds to support 24 veterans and first responders this year. Please join our team in helping us achieve this goal. We would love for you to attend our next gala on May 3rd to experience the amazing support.
What is Parker Performance Institute about? At Parker Performance Institute, we empower individuals to unlock their full potential. Our goal is to provide brain and body care to speed up recovery, improve function, and enhance performance. Our patients range from concussion and brain injury to sports injuries and prevention. We'll tailor a treatment plan for your best results. Being the healthiest you can be is important to you and us. Discover how we can help by visiting parkerperformanceinstitute.com.
We got fans in the house. They've been waiting for this. They bought a ticket for this. This is why they're here.
My name is JC Zavala, and I would like to introduce you to our CEO of InMotion Media Group, Chava Mercado. Chava, welcome.
Thank you very much. That's a lovely intro, JC. Thank you.
So Chava, tell me, how'd you hear about the conference?
So I've heard about the conference since last year. I was actually getting one of the ads. We're in marketing. We do a social media and marketing. We help out a lot of brands, but I'm actually a big fan of the people who spoke at the seminar last year. They had David Goggins, they had Patrick Bet-David, Ryan Holiday, Simon Sinek. And then this year, I came last year, I made a post, and the post did really well. We got about 100,000 views on the traction, and then Parker Seminar invited us to come back here, and we love the audience, we love the conference, we love everything about this. So we're truly like big fans of the conference, even though you and I are not, doctors, but here we are.
Now, we did see Jay Shetty earlier, which was pivotal for this conference. Now we're going to see Huberman. I know you had a question for Huberman. Do you mind sharing that before he goes on stage?
I'm going to keep that one for later because I have a great question for him. But I will say that I'm very excited that I got an autograph book from Jay Shetty. And I already posted that picture, and a lot of people are commenting, I didn't know Jay Shetty was here. Like, that's what really this is about. Parker Seminars is going above and beyond with the level of talent that they have here. The speakers, the people, the audience. I've met a lot of doctors here. Everybody's super nice. And so we just want to continue spreading the word out because we're naturally like fans of the conference.
That's amazing. Now tell me, we're not chiropractors, we're in the marketing space. Like, how can we bring them value?
Great question. So we grow social media brands. So a lot of the chiropractors here, we asked, do you guys know who Gary Vee is? And a lot of them did not know who Gary Vee was. So in our world, in the marketing world, he's like the biggest guy. Like Gary Vee will pack the house here. He'll sell tickets for thousands of dollars. And it's incredible that, as we do like a quick survey of who they're here to see, Gary Vee is in almost like no one's radar. But we think that this is why we want to be here because we add value. So we grow social media accounts for chiropractors. So if they want to get their voice out, if they're in a niche market, if they have high competition in different markets, that's what we do. We ask you guys questions, you tell us what you do, solve some pain problems, get some viral videos, and then get those appointments booked and those products sold.
But not only do you do social media, you also do out-of-home advertising. How does your out-of-home advertising differentiate from the rest of out-of-home advertising?
Listen, they call me the backpack guy for a reason. So I walk around, not many people read the name tag on it, but they'll read the backpack. So they'll be like, hey, I saw you at a conference in Chicago, Dallas, Miami. And as Parker Seminars is expanding to different markets, we can do this and beyond. So the backpack is a little thing. Then we have mobile billboards, advertising on a very large format, large scale. So those are really great. We have our newest product that's an LED rear windows. Those are screens that do phenomenal. And so, but what we want to do is really just tell this story. I was earlier at a different booth, and the guy was telling me like, I'm just like an old guy. He says like, I don't have social media, but he had so much knowledge. And at the end of our like 20-minute conversation, I was like, listen, if I had a camera right here, that could have been 10, 15 different posts. You had answers to questions that I had. You were solving people's problems, pain points. That's all it really takes. That's how we started. Just one camera, one phone, nothing fancy like these things right now, but we'll take it.
Now, talking about stories, and I want to hone in on the word ascend. Can you share a little bit about how you ascended Mount Kilimanjaro and what that was like?
Wow, that's a good transition, JC. So, yeah, I mean, I've had some experiences with chiropractor and some neck injuries. I had a window fall on my head from a 10-story building. I had to go through rehab and a bunch of different things. But exactly on the anniversary, 3 years later after the accident, I decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So I trained for about a year and a half. Didn't tell anyone that I was doing it. I could barely walk at the beginning. And then after that, I ascended, I guess you could say, up the mountain, 19,341 square feet. That was my very first camping experience. So the people in Tanzania were like, have you ever set up a tent before? Do you know what you're doing? I had no idea, but I was very determined. I'm seeing a speaker talk about resilience, so I was very resilient and determined to get this done. And now I have a tattoo of Kilimanjaro on my heart. I can't take off my jacket here, but look on the Instagram.
Now, what's one thing everyone can get out of this conference?
I think they hit the nail on the head at the beginning, where everybody here is to gain something. Like, you network with people. Like, we've met people from different out of towns. We've met people that are here from Vegas. Last year when we came here, we connected one of the doctors, and he actually hired us to do some social media. He was out of town. We did videos for them, and then come back this morning. Those are the first guys that I run into. I mean, there's 4,500 people here, and people start to recognize you. And someone chased me down because of the backpack and was like, "Are you Mr. Chava from the Parker Seminars?" And I don't really work for them. I just really appreciate what you guys are doing for the audience, for people who really need the services. So I'm very, very happy to be here.
And let's talk about the backpack. So the backpack, what's the ROI on the backpack? How much does it cost? Can you tell me more about that?
You want to get on the nitty-gritty? Yeah, sure. Listen, when I first bought this backpack, it was like $300. Now we own the company. It's called the ledbackpack.com. You can put ads, QR codes, anything. People see this much better than they see your, your lanyard, which I'm not even wearing right now. And we've generated over $100,000 in sales, not just directly from the backpack, but because people end up looking up my Instagram account or a QR code or whatever it is, a video, and then they end up hiring our services. So I would say the backpack is the best ROI I've ever done. Yeah, for sure.
Now, we're in Vegas, one of the best cities in the USA. Can you tell me, like, what's one thing that everyone here should do, or at least try to do while they're here in Vegas?
Everybody should be posting where they are right now. Take pictures with the people that you meet. Tag them. Everybody should be tagging each other. This is how we flourish. You're here to make networking happen. You're here to make new friends. And you're also here to help each other out. And so, you never know who you're meeting. You never know who's the person next to you. We were just waiting in line and, for the book signing. And this girl was just so embarrassed about her social media and what she was doing. But she's got like a 4 million, viewed TikTok, from just one video that she was super nervous to talk about. So you never know when you're going to go viral. You never know how you're going to get more attention, new clients, new friends. I consider the guys here at Parker Seminars like great people now, friends, and I hope to, continue working with them for, Miami, Dallas, and already, Vegas in 2026. Wow, let's go.
And Chava, before we wrap this up, what's the best way for people to find you?
Easy on Instagram would be at InstaChava. That's an easier one. I'd say Chava's the name, InstaChava's the game. If you guys, I'll be around walking around with a backpack. You guys can see it. But yeah, I'm just here. I'm in Vegas. I'm local, but we have a company that can help you guys nationwide. Anything you guys want with branding, social media, growth, we're here to help you guys out. I love Parker Seminars. You guys are great. Can't say enough great things about you guys, and really appreciate this. Wow. There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, InstaChava.
Wow.
So I'm here with Dr. Andy Galpin. So your talk was fantastic. Your information on now the tech and human performance innovations and everything else that's going on, that was fascinating. I am not somebody that's like dived deep into it. So for me, in hearing it, I was like, this is great stuff. Now, kind of surface level for me. So for the docs that are sitting there and all the audience that's sitting there and hearing this information, what is it now that you see as like, all right, these are the human sensor error that you're looking at?
Yes, the ability to test and monitor and measure is greater than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. And that capacity is only going to continue to grow. And that puts two demands on the given practitioner. Number one, people are going to come in and ask for those things. Ask your opinion, ask your thoughts, ask for measurements of those. And so it's my opinion that modern day practitioners need to be braced for that. They need to speak that language a little bit. They don't need to be technology experts, and they don't need to be offering every service out there. But at least if someone comes in and says, I'm here, you're my chiropractor, I trust you. What do you think about this supplement? What do you think about my blood work? They need to be able to speak the language and at least give them some guidance of saying this is not individual products, but this is a framework to think about it. The second piece of that is the inverse. Chiropractors and other practitioners now have the ability to really show objectively that their stuff is working. Prior to that, generally chiropractic is mostly centered around pain, right? I'm here because my neck, back, something hurts. And the only way I can show you it's working and get buy-in is hopefully your perception of your pain goes down. Yeah. But even if that doesn't, now you can stack a technology on it, a measurement on it, and show, well, you know what, your inflammation is down. Oh, great, yeah, I don't really notice that huge change in my pain or something, but this blood marker of overuse or resilience or sleep deprivation is getting better. This cognitive test is enhancing. Now you're actually giving them reason and rationale to support what you're doing and to follow through.
Well, with that, you were talking about the enhancement and being able to monitor all that. What is that in correlation with the digital twin?
Yeah, so the digital twin is in every area of all consumerism right now. So if you were to go to build this building again, we would make a digital twin of it first, an electronic copy, and then we would run fake earthquakes against it. We would put it up against storms and say, like, what broke first and where? That's been in industry engineering for 60 years. Actually, it came from that first NASA mission that failed in space, where they had to engineer the actual space shuttle on Earth, run a bunch of diagnostics, figure out what solution was going to work. They got it, and they sent it back up to the crew and saved their lives.
Interesting.
So it's been mandatory in automobile manufacturing and engineering for years. In the last few years, we've said, now how can we do that on the human level? So how can I take your blood and urine and hair and make a digital copy of your physiology?
Yeah.
So that now I can understand and diagnose prognosis, treatment interventions. I can predict them. I can run simulations to see, like, what supplement is going to work for him based on all these factors. And I don't have to go try it for 6 months and come back. I can actually predict that stuff now. So those technologies are available. They're being used right now, and they're being heavily funded. And so the access to that from the normal practitioner level is close. And it's ready, and it's going to be something people are using very readily in the near future.
Well, you were saying that teams are using it,
Yeah.
things like that, which makes sense, right? And
Yep.
then it's only a matter of time before it comes down to everybody else getting to use those things.
exactly right.
I loved your example of that from the stage where you were talking about, now we can see whenever this happens, that means that typically we're going to see like this happens in your spine, your nervous system, all those kind of things. I love that because then we can start to see, okay, we can track all this.
Oh, yeah.
And see those things.
Yeah,
It's
and we can
fantastic.
predict it too. So the whole idea is eventually we can stop novel problems from happening.
Love it.
Right. So the example I gave on stage was that person that throws their back out every 6 months. It's probably not random.
Yeah.
Something happened there, right? So whether this was sleep got lower, inflammation was higher, stress load. I mean, pick
Yeah.
combinations, right?
Right.
Well, if you can see those things starting to build up to an objective cutoff point for you, that cutoff point for me might be different.
Sure.
Or irrelevant.
Right.
It may not matter. It may just be simply my exercise routine, whatever the case, right? We can start learning that insight into you. Now those things that appear random aren't so random. Really easy example of that, panic attacks. Panic attacks are perceived as completely out of the blue. I didn't have any idea it was coming. You can see them in your blood 90 minutes before you feel a symptom.
Interesting.
Physiology is showing you that something is going to happen.
Yes.
It's now just a function of, do you see the signal?
Right.
90 minutes, we can start seeing these symptoms weeks before now in various metrics of the cardiopulmonary system. That's the type of stuff we're talking about where we're saying, hey, let's get you out of catastrophe. One more example on that, suicide prevention. There's an entire branch of technology called digital phenotyping, which can see high-risk suicidal behaviors in people just from phone activity.
Wow.
And I don't mean things they're searching or
Yes.
words. How fast they're touching their phone, how quick they're tapping the buttons, how fast they're scrolling.
Wow.
Can predict suicide at a very high accuracy level. So it's this type of stuff where I'm saying, like, we can get ahead of the game instead of being retroactive so much.
Yes.
We can now be proactive.
Well, you mentioned about accuracy, and you talked about the Swedish Swimming Federation and the accuracy at which they're predicting things.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because the fact that they can predict those to such high accuracy.
Yeah, so that's actually been done. The Swedish World Championships was one example. It was done at the Chicago Marathon as well, and a bunch of other places. So this is another group, this is another company that has digital twins that input your own data for you and can predict performance weeks, if not months in advance. And the level of precision they had there was within 1/10 of a second of race performance.
I mean, and to be able to see these people are going to hit their PRs by a second and all those kind of things. I mean, that's phenomenal.
We've actually done this with some of my athletes directly. And I remember being at a Major League Baseball game with one of our pitchers, sitting next to his parents. And I knew the data that day.
Did you really?
And I knew it was not good.
Okay.
And his dad is kind of involved, his mom's not.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there with his parents, and his mom was like, oh, like, how's he doing today?
Yeah.
And I was like, and his dad looked at me, and I just kind of gave him a look, and I'm like, oh, yeah, like, boy, the weather's great today or whatever. Because I knew.
You knew what was coming.
I knew Vila was going to be poor that day.
Wow.
And if he was going to have a good day, he was going to have to use tactics and creativity, and like he was going to have to win because his physical body was going to be
Already down.
just down that percent. It's that 0.5%, right?
But when you're playing at that level,
exactly.
right, like it makes all the difference.
Yep.
Wow. That's fantastic. To be able to see that you can see all this from this wearable tech now and from these things and from these measures that you're looking at is fantastic. and the way that we can predict things that's coming. So you were talking about, so what's this going to be as far as like implementation for clinicians? You had like, all right, these are the things that we need to look at whenever we're looking at this with implementing as clinicians.
Yeah, when I say things like what we've been talking about the last few minutes, a lot of the times the reactions from practitioners is overwhelmed.
Sure.
I can't, how the hell am I going to do that?
Yeah, how do I compete with all that?
Zero chance,
Yeah.
right? I'm over here, I'm seeing 150 patients a day. Unrealistic.
Sure.
Got it, I got you. The reason I'm bringing this stuff up is not to try to convince you all you should be running digital twin models. It is saying, okay, let's scale that down. Let's scale that down 95% of the way. Okay, great. Can you use some tools or technologies, or when they get presented to you, do you have a thinking system where you can judiciously integrate them?
Yeah.
Or not?
Okay.
And so that system I said is, okay, like, is it validated scientifically? Is it actually measuring what it says it's measuring? And number two, can you use something? Maybe that something is one thing. And you can pick that very specifically that allows you to measure what you're doing and know if it's working, right? So we think this is our treatment. We're going to use this laser therapy, and we're going to use this brain activation system and this new training protocol and this supplement. How do you know if it worked?
Right.
My back doesn't hurt as much. Well, maybe it actually doesn't hurt as much, but then you did something stupid with your training, so the supplement did work, but it got bound, counter, you don't know, right? So what I'm trying to get across is there's so much technology now that if you think through carefully what question you're trying to ask, and then pick that one thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just what you start with for 6 months. For whatever you can now answer questions. Pick the thing you're most interested in. Brain function. Okay, great. There's ways we can directly and objectively test this. Very cheap and easy.
Yeah.
Digestion. We can test that. Microbiome. We can test these things. You don't need to do them all. You shouldn't.
Right.
But you can go very judiciously pick something, get information, improve your practice, figure out what is actually working in your building, not what the randomized control trials say.
Sure.
What is working in your building for your patients, and now get better at your own practice.
I think that's the thing that I loved about the stuff that you were talking about. It's all individualized. It's not, here's the group, here's these people that we're comparing it to. It's no, we're comparing it you to you.
That's exactly right.
Me versus me. And I think that's the thing that, because we're all have different, we're all made up differently. We all have different components. We all have different stressors. We all have different things. Sure, there's a common thread throughout all that, but at the same time, like I want to know about the things about me that matters, right? And how that makes that work. So in looking at the tools, kind of looking at that for human performance, what should we be seeing in that? Like when you're looking for a tool, like what should you be seeing? Like how complex should it be? Like how deep should it go? Like all those kind of things.
That's a great question, because the more complex is not necessarily better.
Yeah.
The deeper, the more expensive, not necessarily better. It should come back to fundamentally, number one, is it doing its primary objective? So if you are picking just lasers are an easy one, red light therapy, any light therapy, okay, great. And it's claiming to do X. Then we should measure X. And that measurement should be third-party validated. It should be at the highest scientific fidelity possible. That is still really cheap.
Yeah.
The gold standard in laboratories is now $100, $200. Like these things are super cheap. So that is the first thing we should look out for. So if the product, whether that is you, the practitioner claiming, or some company is trying to sell you to use their product in your clinic, either way, great. What's it supposed to do? What's the main thing you think it does? Yeah. I'm not going to hold you to all the secondary and tertiary claims. What's the top thing it does? I'm going to measure it. If it's not doing it, then it's not doing it.
Right. And that's it.
There you go.
And if it's not doing it, like you said from stage, if it's not doing it for that person,
it's exactly right. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. You can pick 100 randomized control trials. Sure. In general, it works. Awesome, right? Yeah. I could give you a bunch of examples. Creatine monohydrate. Highly studied, the most researched, the most well-studied and evidence-supported supplement on the market. I don't know, 20, 30% of people still doesn't do much more. Okay, caffeine. I mean, you pick the thing that you like, cognitive behavioral therapy. I mean, pick whatever venue that you're into, and you'll find 3 to 30% of people it doesn't work for. So I don't care. The evidence base tells us what's most likely to work for most people as a starting place. Yeah. Your practice should be founded on evidence base.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you stop there. You treat the person.
Yes. Yeah, that has been a common theme today. Treat the person.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. So this is fantastic. Thanks for sharing all this. I know that people are getting a ton of value from this, so thank you very much. And thanks for the time.
Appreciate it, man.
It's
Thank you
great.
so much.
Your future starts now. At Parker University, we combine cutting-edge technology with top-tier education to prepare the next generation of health professionals. With hands-on experience and expert faculty by your side, you'll build the skills and confidence to make a real impact. Parker University. Learn it here, live it in every day.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're really delighted that we could be here with you. And we know you got a lot on your plate, a lot of classes to go to, a lot of things to do, and most importantly, not most importantly, but probably on your list is to discover Las Vegas, or let's say rediscover it. And with me today is Sherry McAllister, who's the president of the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress. And when you talk about a leader, and when you talk about someone that really gets things done, executes, and every morning wakes up with the goal of how can I make chiropractic better by getting positive press for chiropractic, that's this woman that's sitting with us today. Sherry, let me ask you. I don't know what your work week is. Maybe 100 hours a week, seriously, a lot. How do you do it? How do you have all this energy?
You know, it's kind of a funny thing because when you think about jacked up and fired up, it's not just the coffee, although Starbucks does a nice brand here. It is really about chiropractic. When you think about the benefits that this entire expo is showcasing, it's about patient-centered care and chiropractic.
Right.
And what's better than that?
It's fantastic. Now, you've done many, many things for the foundation, but for those of us that are listening in right now, if I were to say to you, what are some of the things that really you're most proud of, or the future that's coming? Tell us a little bit about what excites you and gets you up every morning to fight for chiropractic.
This is the most amazing year, and I will tell you with all ounce of authenticity that although I've been in practice for almost 30 years, which is
Wow.
unheard of.
I would have said 15.
Thank
I
you,
would have,
Ken.
yeah.
It's the build out of working with the foundation, and there's three really important things that we're doing this year.
Tell us about those. What are they?
The first one is coming up in May, and this entire expo is actually invited to it. It's called Chirothon.
Wow.
Have you heard about it?
What's that mean? I have, but I don't know if they've heard about it. What is it?
So if you're old enough to remember, there was a man named Jerry Lewis, and he was an absolutely fantastic individual. And he did for muscular dystrophy what Sherry Lewis wants to do for chiropractic with the foundation. And that is bring about the benefits of chiropractic care as far and wide as we can go. And it's going to be held this year.
Wow.
In May in Atlantic City.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, for those of you that are out there, I want to give you some information. I am told that the foundation produced 3 commercials last year. And I am told that you had subject matter of like golf and pickleball, and I think the other one was rodeo, bull riding, right?
Beautiful.
All right. Now you tell me if I'm right on this. I heard that the commercial that the foundation did promoting chiropractic relative to golf was picked up 17 times.
100%. Did you hear that? The energy was so big we reverberated.
I did. We reverberated, but 17 times by ESPN. The pickleball one was 20 times, and tell me about the rodeo one, because it was so big, I don't know if we can believe that.
So we actually filmed it in the largest rodeo in the world, the Calgary Stampede. And when it came to Las Vegas, and we're all here right now in Las Vegas, we actually had it air 350 times during the National Pro Rodeo here.
Wait. You're saying that the rodeo commercial was shown 350 times free? Free. Yay. Fantastic.
Now, the best part of that is the bull riders, because their 8 seconds is 8
like
seconds of life.
And the tight belts,
I mean, there's nothing
whatever.
wrong with a bull rider. But you think about what chiropractic can do for a bull rider and how excited they got about being taken care of by chiropractic.
Sure.
And they were like,
keep them in the saddle.
so happy to do it. That's, I think, why we got the 350 times the air of the commercial. And listen, when you air a commercial, it actually motivates the entire community to get chiropractic care.
Well, I heard that when you had independent analysis of the worth and value, they called earned media, of all those 3 commercials, that there was 100 million.
100 million.
100 million views for the profession on just those 3 commercials.
Just those 3 commercials. Now think about ESPN picking up a golf commercial that showcases
Was it like
how
the Masters
chiropractic
or
does it.
something?
It was the Masters
Oh
tournament
my God,
in April.
the Masters.
So we're in places that we never thought we could go. And
Absolutely.
those 3, like the National Pickleball, I mean, remember this, the National Pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports, pickleball, and we're showcasing movement is the key.
Beautiful. Now, I also heard that you had another event that got like 180 million views. Now, the first one, those commercials were 100 million. That's a lot of people. But this other event had 180 million people. What was that?
So we went through and we started deciding, on our articles in our journals and what we do to make sure people know who we are. Just 2 days ago, we got an article that was posted because sleep, as we know, I sleep with N, is a very important part of people's lives.
Nexi is.
And so Nexi is the key. Sleep hygiene is what every chiropractor knows about. If you're not sleeping well, you're not healing well.
Right.
So we got in Tom's guide 2 days ago, which has 40 million users that come
All right, now
per
listen
month.
to this. Not only did the foundation become the #1 podcast in the healthcare category, but they also have Sherry as an advisor for 40 million viewers. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Oh, way to go. Love that.
It's such a key. Adjusted reality, you brought it up. It is trusted by the adjusted, and it's having these guests that really showcase the enthusiasm of what chiropractic is and how it changed their lives.
But I also want to tell you something else. There's a heck of a big party that's going to be happening in New York City in October.
Yes, there is.
And tell everyone in the audience this first ever record, as Jim Parker used to say, record breaker, history maker. What's going to happen in October of this year in New York City that you guys are invited to watch?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
This is the first time we've branded with a big brother, and that branding is the Forbes brand. So we're going to have
Now, wait,
a book.
Forbes, is that
Forbes, the magazine.
No, wait a minute.
Forbes,
Like what you see, like Forbes.
Forbes.
That's big. Okay, keep
That's
going.
big. A global company.
Yes.
That is going to brand with us to talk about chiropractic in a fun, relatable way. And that is building our profession and making sure that we get people seeing chiropractors all over the world.
But Forbes is going to publish a book for
They're going to
you,
publish
right?
a book with us in October 14th. It's dropping in New York City.
And you're going to be the author.
We're going to, well, that's true. I am the author.
Now, I understand when they publish a book, they kind of keep it under wraps so nobody can see it ahead of time.
True,
But
true
they have
story.
this thing called a watermark where they take it out of the thing and let's see it. let endorsement people see it. Tell us one or two of the people that have endorsed your book that's going to be broken or introduced in October. I think it's the 14th
That's
in New
correct.
York. But who are just maybe one or two of the famous people that have read your book and went to bat on it and said they love it?
So on an epic level, we have in main media, the top chief medical correspondent on all main media right now, any one stream of it, is Dr. Mark Siegel. And
Now, he's an MD.
He is an MD.
And he's saying that chiropractic is good.
How many times has that happened? Never. So,
Never, ever?
Well, that's not true. We're just teasing around. But the big thing is Dr. Mark Siegel read the book, and he was invigorated to see what he didn't know is now coming true, which is chiropractic is a whole being care.
Whole being.
Whole being.
Now, all head to toe.
Yes, because so many times we're just stuck in, it's just about the spine, but really when a patient comes to you, they're a whole person.
Oh, like that triangle about mental and physical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now
Okay.
they're seeing us in a different light, whether we're preventing problems, maybe we're optimizing their sports capability, or we're alleviating pain. And it's chronic pain that this entire America is suffering with.
So Mark Siegel, the #1 talk show Fox News guy that has the highest rating of everybody, gave it a glowing review of your book.
He did.
All right, now that's for chiropractic. It's not your book, you're the author, but it's for chiropractic. Who else endorsed the thing?
We have the world's leading expert in Alzheimer's prevention and research,
Wow.
Dr. Khalsa. And he is an absolute amazing individual. Took the book, read the book, loved the book, and gave it a raving review. And remember, the book, if you think about chiropractic, we're all about health span, longevity. And he wants to make people aware of Alzheimer's. We got a great relationship with his foundation, and when he read the book, he's like, this is exactly what the world needs. A book to talk about chiropractic.
What I really enjoyed is how there's some simple things in the book, how they talk about if you just walk, gee, I forget, I think it's 30 minutes a day, your chance of getting Parkinson's or Alzheimer's goes down, I think like 30-35%. So take a walk, everybody. It's a good thing.
I love the walk.
Yeah, me too.
And this is Vegas, so we're walking.
Oh, we're doing a lot of that. But now, so that's what's going on. This is the book that's coming out. It's in October. It's for chiropractic. It's a wonderful thing that you're doing to help get this out there. But you know, Sherry, what I like about all this effort, whether it was the 100 million commercials, whether it was the 180 million views, whether it's the 40 million Tom's website thing, what I love is that one of the things that the chiropractors here, I've been coming to Parker since I was 7 years old, and I'm older than 7, everybody. I don't want to tell you how old. But bottom line, the holy grail for a chiropractor, as long as I can remember, is new patients.
Yes.
And your effort with this book and the hundreds of millions of, or 250 million responses so far, is all about getting new patients. I love that. Tell me about that.
The best part of the foundation is it's about you. It's about bringing people to your office through a Find a Doc directory.
Getting new patients for you.
Exactly. We
Yes.
have 2 tiers of membership, foundation level, and then our premier level. And every dollar that goes in, unlike anything else here, goes back into the community to really help patient-centered care so the patient knows who we are and what we do. And that, I think, is the gold where we begin to be a household name everywhere, and we change the global landscape. So we take the small minority of who is being seen by a chiropractor, and we make it the vast majority.
We're essentially taking and making the world a better place one body at a time.
That's exactly
I mean,
right.
that is such a beautiful thing that's occurring here. Now, we've covered some of the things that were happened last year. We covered some of the things that are going on this year. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think the folks would like to hear about, whatever that might be?
I would love to introduce them to the Adjusted Reality podcast for their younger patients.
Okay, tell me about that.
That is 90% of our youth are listening to podcasts. Like
Now-
you and
now
I used to
hold me.
listen
How
to the
old do you
radio.
have to be youth? Can I
You
listen?
can count. You can
I
count.
can listen.
It's all about mental age.
Even though I'm old, I can listen.
No, you're not old.
All right.
It's mental age.
I want to listen. Okay. All right.
Adjusted Reality Podcast is really what inspires them to see a chiropractor. Oftentimes you'll see them on TikTok and you'll look at the chiropractic adjustment. It gets them excited. We did a Today Show with Dr. Alessandra Colon, who is the host of Crack Addicts.
Miss Chiropractic.
Miss Chiropractic,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
When we get them involved and excited about what chiropractic is, they see a better future. And it's a drug-free future that is spent about them and how they can build their life by choices they make every single day.
Wow. So really, that Today Show segment, along with the Adjusted Reality Podcast, along with the Adjusted Reality book, and all of the things we talked about, human performance with the rodeo people and the golf and the pickleball, I see what you're doing. You're pretty smart. You're taking and linking all this together with one message that really drives home about well-being.
Yes.
For the patient.
100%.
I love
Ken.
it.
It's a whole being care, and it's from babies to bigger babies.
Like me, yeah, okay.
It's being able to have the life that you want with the quality of life that you want by being with a chiropractor to help you, coach you along the way. And that, I think, is what the message was at the very beginning. D.D. Palmer was a masterful marketer, and he wanted to make sure everyone got that message.
You bet, you bet. Well, now the foundation's been around for about 21 years now, right?
That's correct.
And I remember in the beginning that we used to contact the media, and they'd hang up.
Yes.
And they wouldn't get back to us and whatever. Boy, has that changed, hasn't it?
It really has. And for many that are out there listening right now, you know that bad media can hurt us all. And we used to get that on a weekly basis, and probably even every day. We just we could only handle so much.
My father was known as a quack.
Yes.
I understand.
Now we're getting it on a very, very low level, but Kent, we're getting TV segments.
Well, they're calling you.
That's exactly. They're calling us to go on the TV segments. And I don't know, in my lifetime, how did that happen? Or how did we get on Tom's Guide where we were the only expert about sleep?
I just love it when we're on the Today Show or some of these podcasts or these commercials. I love it when the consumer can go to that foundation website and find a doc.
Yes.
I love how they can key in where they
100%.
live and do that. That's what we want to do, is to get patients in the doctors, all your offices. That's what we want to do. Everybody should have a waiting list practice.
100%.
We don't have enough chiropractors to take care of the needs of everyone. And you're helping get those needs out.
And there's people out there like 99-year-old Elaine Lelaine, who is still shouting it out to everyone that everyone needs a chiropractor. Remember, Jack couldn't say he was a chiropractor.
Yes.
So now is our time to scream it from the rooftops. Is we're all coming together and we're building a beautiful message.
Love
it's
it.
a win-win all the way around.
Sherry, I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. This woman doesn't sleep. She works so hard for all of us. But we're coming to the end of our segment here. And thanks for listening in, everybody. I hope you got a little something out about this, how we're trying. The Foundation for Chiropractic Progress is doing everything they can to get patients to you and to help your profession grow even better. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, Sherry. And good luck to you.
Thank you, Kent.
Okay.
My name is Chris May, and I am the ambassador for the INVICTA project. The INVICTA Gala is an event held to honor participants, celebrate recovery, and support the ongoing pursuit of effective treatment. The INVICTA project provides treatment to military veterans and first responders who have experienced traumatic brain injuries. The inaugural launch of the INVICTA Gala was filled with familiar faces and warm support from not only professionals in their respective fields, but also the community at large. Over the past year, the INVICTA project has treated 12 service members and have 5 scheduled to attend before the gala, thanks to our incredible supporters. My goal is to raise funds to support 24 veterans and first responders this year. Please join our team in helping us achieve this goal. We would love for you to attend our next gala on May 3rd to experience the amazing support.
Morning. Killing it back there. Trying to.
Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know that on behalf of Erchonia Corporation, we're excited and we're honored to be here at Parker Las Vegas. We want to give a special thank you to the Parker team, especially Chris Williams and Phyllis, who you guys know and who does so much to make this event wonderful, and also for Dr. Morgan. My name's Joseph Zapolsky. I'm the International Sales Director for Erchonia, and I've been with the company 23 years. We're going to dive in a little bit about the story of Erchonia and how it came to be, why we do what we do as a company. And I'm very happy to be here today with a friend of mine, Dr. Ryan Manning. He is one of our lecturers that teaches other doctors how to implement this technology into their practice and how to help people with it. Is there anything you'd like to say to the folks, Dr. Manning?
No, hello, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to tell you about this technology that has not only changed my life, but the life of my patients. I'll give you some stories and some practical tips and a couple of settings that you could use if you own Erchonia lasers, and we'll just go from there.
Excellent. And if you guys haven't seen Dr. Manning yet, he's a brilliant healer from California. He started off as a massage therapist. He became a doctor of chiropractic, and now he has also become a low-level laser expert. He treats a lot of famous people, and he has a waiting list for people that want to work with him. And I believe it's because he understands the body on all different levels, structurally, soft tissue, energy, so it allows him to make a big difference in healing. And I'm very excited that he brings that expertise to Erchonia. Now, for those of you who might not know Erchonia, we are a family-owned and privately run company. And we started off of one of the family members needing to deal with chronic pain. Our company is owned by two men, Kevin Tusek and Steve Shanks. And Steve's father, Chuck, is a paratrooper, or was a paratrooper for the United States Army. He dealt with a lot of chronic pain, and especially in his knees and his back. The guys, they said, okay, there has to be a better way to help our father with this pain so he can get through life and enjoy the things that he wants to do every day. They worked with doctors in Colorado almost 3 decades ago, and they came across a laser technology. The original lasers were from different countries, they were large, they were not safe, they broke down all the time. So Kevin Tusek who is also a retired Navy engineer, said, I think I can put these lasers into a smaller, more concise package, and we can get something out to doctors that can really help people. And that's how the story of Erchonia Corporation began. Now, as they started using these small lasers on different people, the doctors, they started telling their colleagues about it and saying, wow, we have something really, really amazing here. And other doctors wanted them. And that's how we started the business as far as selling lasers. Our other owner, Stephen Shanks, he has always been passionate about research. And he wanted to show, okay, how do we really prove through clinical studies, through the highest form of science, what these lasers are doing? And that began our mission, which to this day has still stood strong, that first and foremost, we're a research-based company. And I think that's what draws doctors to us. And maybe, Ryan, you can share some of the things that I think the audience would like to know as a doctor, what drew you to Erchonia?
I like to say it was actually just fate. I had 2 devastating injuries to myself, and my girlfriend at the time basically said, if you don't go have those checked out, I'm going to kill you. So I had broken my ankle. I had 2 breaks traversing the talar dome. I could not run. I could not step down on my foot. And this was after a year of the injury. It was just bad enough I didn't need surgery, or just good enough of a bad injury I didn't need surgery, but I still couldn't walk. My average pain was probably about a 9 out of 10 daily. Jeez. And I also, my daughter had hurt my neck. She herniated 3 levels of ligaments in my neck. The herniation went right into my spine. My right foot went numb. And I had some stem cells for the neck pain, and that got rid of the numbness, but the pain was still there. So between my leg and my ankle and my neck, I was in horrible pain. So finally I go get MRIs, and he goes, you have to have surgery on your ankle. If you don't have surgery on your ankle, in 10 years you're having an ankle replacement. So between the surgery that I needed for my neck and my ankle, I really fell into a depression. I was fortunate enough to come across Penny, the sales rep from the West Coast, and she gave me a bunch of information, and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna take a stab at it. Erchonia was gracious enough to give us, in my grad school, a set of lasers, and I remember hearing about it, and so when this came across, I said, this is something that I might be able to use. So I bought the entry-level double red Accelerate. Within 3 weeks, I accidentally ran down my patient's stairs. And now up to this point, I tell people all the time, if somebody was shooting at me and my children, I would have looked like a pirate with a peg leg walking. And I accidentally ran down my patient's stairs. And that moment when I was fighting back tears, because I never thought I would run again, that was when I realized this is something that's completely different. So the nice thing for me is I started from that base. And then it was, and to back up, it was about 4 days after I ran down the patient's stairs that I was showing somebody a demonstration of a woman that I had seen in a podcast who her range of motion was tripled after a Chiari malformation surgery that she had. And so I was showing them, you know, all of the ranges of motion, and it was then that I realized my neck went from an 8 down to about a 3. And that's really when it was just so life-changing for me, because I never thought I would run again. And so then I purchased another one. They had a purple clearance, so I got the EVRL, which is red and violet, and I used that one. And using it on myself, I saw how much better I got, but the real eye-opener was when I started using it on my patients. Watching their reaction from an Accelerate, which they were like, this is amazing, to an EVRL. And then as soon as they came out with the GVL, I said, I have to have this thing. And the benefit of having the lasers the way that I did was I saw incrementally how important it was to keep adding the different wavelengths. And so for the people who don't know, the main function, one of the main functions, is that the lasers work on the mitochondria. you have 4 proteins that are light receptive before ATP synthase. And when they are stimulated by these certain particular wavelengths, they have a function of producing more ATP that's measurable. So complex 1 and 2 is stimulated by violet, and that will give you a 40% increase of ATP. Complex 3 is green, and that will give you a 40% increase of ATP. So they took those 2 wavelengths and put them together in one device. So that one device, you get 3 of the 4 proteins, but that's an 80% increase of ATP. But then when you add the red to it, now it's 100% because complex 4 is stimulated by red. That will give you the final 20%. So you will double the output of ATP. And if you stop at that point as a base and you go, well, how important are these proteins in ATP synthesis? Pick a disease, put an electron transport chain, and you will trace every chronic disease and illness back to 1 or more of those 4 proteins being dysfunctional. And so, you know, I will treat people, and I will step off the record and say, as a treating physician, not as Erchonia, that I've been able to treat people's immune systems that have chronic disease and illness. And for an example, and this is something that you can actually go and listen to the podcast, the Laser Light Show, Miracle Monday. If you put in my name, Dr. Ryan Manning, you're going to get a bunch of stories that are true miracles. And one of them is a patient named Grace, who she had a 40-year incurable disease of bronchiectasis. When she was 6 years old, she started getting stabbing pain in her ribs. She was constantly sick. It took her 35 years to get a diagnosis of bronchiectasis. So I meet her she's 46 years old. She's had pneumonia 33 times. Her lungs are 75% scarred. She has 4 to 5 breathing treatments a day. They forced her at UCLA, the head of cystic fibrosis, forced her to get a vaccine if she wanted to go into the hospital to continue to get her life-saving treatment. And so she died 3 times and was revived, and now she is absolutely wrecked. She is bedridden. She cannot, she said it takes her 90 minutes to get out of bed to go to the bathroom in the morning. So I said, we're gonna put it on this mixture of light, and I call it love and light. And we put the GVL on the love setting, which is 3,16, 3,16. And the light setting is 8,12, 8,14. So I put that mixture of love and light on her for 10 minutes. And while she's sitting here, her eyes are closed and she starts twitching. And I'd never seen that before, but I just knew she was okay. So after 10 minutes, the laser goes off and she's still twitching. And I go, are you okay? With her eyes closed, she goes, I don't know. And I go, well, do you have any pain? And she goes, no, it's gone. And I go, I want you to put your arm above your head, twist, turn to the side, and take a deep breath. And do you feel it? And she goes, no, it's gone. And I said, good, you're healed. So we start kind of laughing. And I go, come on, let's go for a walk. And she goes, that I can't do. She goes, you don't understand. Walking up the steps here, I almost passed out. She goes, I thought I was going to have to call an ambulance and ruin my day and go to UCLA and do breathing treatment. She goes, but something told me, calm down, you need to be here. So she goes, you know, that's something I can't do because I have an oxygen tank. And I go, but you're healed. And I grabbed her by the wrist and I power walked her 300 feet up a hill. It was about a 15, 16% grade because we were right below the Hollywood sign in the Hollywood Hills. And I'm telling you, when we get to the top, I had realized that her eyes were closed the entire time I was dragging her up the hill. And I get to the top and I look down at her and I go, you okay? And she goes, I think so. And that one treatment completely cured her of a 40-year incurable disease. So she goes back to her doctor 2 weeks later and she says nothing to her. And she lets her listen to her lungs. She does the lung sounds. And the doctor goes, oh my God, your lungs. I've never heard them like this. She goes, the program, it's finally working. And then, the patient goes, no, you don't understand. I had this doctor and he did this laser treatment on my lungs. And I'm all better now. And she goes, hold on, honey. She goes, trust me, it wasn't that. It was the program. It's finally working. And now we're going to put you on a Z-Pack for the rest of your life. And she goes, absolutely not. She quit all of her medication. It's been a year and a half, and that lady has not been sick since we saw her. She has a completely brand new lease on life, like she was never sick. 46 years of illness gone in one 10-minute session. And why? It's because look at the laser, that wavelength. It's going to stimulate that protein. And if that protein's dysfunctional, it's not going to pass the electrons on. So that's the bottleneck. This is like carburetor fluid that just jams it through there. So if you use the 3 wavelengths at once, you're firing all 4 proteins, all 4 cylinders are ramming electrons through, making ATP, so that way the body can heal. And sometimes that's all it needs is one 10-minute session. I would love to have anybody who has a serious problem come to the back, 5 minutes, and I will bet you 95% of people go, this is different, I feel better, and it's immediate. And it's like a 5-minute challenge, and I will put anybody to it, that if you come and give me a problem, you're going to feel better when I'm done.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Manning. I would probably say that's one of the things that makes me happy about working with Erchonia. And now it's become way more than a job. It's a passion. It's my life's work. I've been with the company for 23 years. And you get caught in the daily work of manufacturing stuff, selling stuff, answering phones, admin work. But when we hear these kind of stories from doctors who have invested in Erchonia and bought a laser, doctors like yourself or Dr. Dan Murphy that use the lasers and they tell us how they're changing people's lives, it makes what we're doing at work so worth it. It's wonderful to be a part of a company whose passion is to find a way to put these tools into the hands of doctors so they can get the best patient outcomes possible. And myself personally, I have a daughter who has a disability, and I didn't really see how important it was until you go through that kind of life-changing experience. And having these doctors help formulate programs for our daughter where she is doing so well with her development. You had mentioned treating the immune system, which obviously that's off-label, but we've seen how healthy she's been compared to kids who are dealing with these kind of disabilities. And I have no doubt that the lasers, the brilliant guidance from the doctors we've worked with showing us how to use them and do these things has really helped her. So you sharing that story just really warms me up, because it's like, wow, this is why I love being a part of this company. And I think it's also important for people to know, as a company, we pride ourselves on getting these wonderful tools to you guys, but that's a lot of different ways we do it. The level 1 clinical research we talked about that our owner, Steve Shanks, has always prided himself on conducting to make sure we were showing the highest form of science for the laser. And for you guys who might not know, these are multi-site, placebo-controlled, randomized, and double-blind studies proving safety and efficacy. So whenever we come out with a laser, you know you have the highest form of science backing it. Also, we pride ourselves on good manufacturing processes. So our headquarters is in South Carolina. We are 85% self-contained. As you know, you've seen the headquarters, you came to our grand opening, thank you. But what we do there is we make sure that we are ISO certified, MDSAP certified, OSHA compliant, all of the things out there that are important, where if a doctor looks at a spec sheet and goes, this is what I say I'm purchasing from the company, that's exactly what they're getting. And we're audited yearly to prove that and to make sure we're compliant to that. So that's something that's very important to us. Now, another thing I'd like to dive into that's important to us is education. Doctors like Ryan Manning, Dan Murphy, Trevor Berry, Kurt Gare, who's also here with us at Parker, they teach other doctors to use this technology along with all the other things that are available for patient outcomes to be the best they can be. And Dr. Manning, I'd kind of like you to share the story of, obviously you started with the lasers, but what became your passion and your drive to become a speaker and teach other doctors about these lasers?
Well, I mean, it was the impact that it had on my life was so profound, and you know, I can only treat so many people. So if I can show people what I do and how I've done it, and when I say it is not I have nothing. It is a gift that I have, but truly the remarkable ability is the light itself, that it's so intuitive and it can heal such a wide net of things. And then, like you said, there's 22 FDA clearances. I don't know if there's another laser company that can even come close to that, but this, it has 22 FDA clearances and it hurts nobody. They've never had a single adverse event in any clinical study. So that's what's tremendous about it. But then when you start going into populations where there's no hope, and that's the beautiful thing about the light, is that the light is hope for dark situations. And I wish I could tell you who it was, but Dr. Gare and I are very fortunate to treat one of the most famous people in the world that has a particular dementia. And this guy was like an airplane plummeting from the sky. And now he's actually stable and doing well and actually coming out of it. And it's a slow process, but he's getting better, which is incredible for somebody that has dementia. And so there's hope. And what I tell people is, especially for doctors, don't buy it for your patients. Get it for you and let the patients pay for it. Because you know, when you put it on the brain setting, the brain will release brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. It's just basically Miracle-Gro for the brain. And so all of us need to laser our brains. We need that to be secreted if we want to keep healthy brain function. So, you know, those are the little details, but really it's not about selling lasers. It's about putting light into the hands of people so they can heal and then watch other people heal.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's probably one of the things that's most important to us is, like you said, getting these tools into the hands of doctors so they can help as many people as possible. And I'm also very excited that we're now branching into veterinary medicine.
Oh, yes.
Because we're able to see these same kinds of things with helping animals and helping veterinarians do the care they need to do to get the best outcomes there as well.
Yeah.
I know we're coming to the end of our time here, but is there anything else you'd like to share before we say goodbye to the folks?
You know, I would just say that just get one. I don't care what laser you buy, even if it's the entry-level double red, 20% increase of ATP. If you put that light in your hands, it will change your life. It's impossible that it won't. Virtually impossible. But if you start there, you'll see miracles, and then you can just keep adding along. And the more that you do, the more miracles that you'll see. That's
Excellent. Thank you. And I would just like to say once again, on behalf of Erchonia, thank you to everyone at Parker. We have always loved our partnership and being a part of the university. We've always loved supporting the students in any way we can. And we really appreciate everything that Dr. Morgan has done to grow the university, expand its footprint, and get more and more people excited about chiropractic care and health in general. So once again, thank you guys very much.
All right.
My name is Chris May, and I am the ambassador for the INVICTA project. The INVICTA Gala is an event held to honor participants, celebrate recovery, and support the ongoing pursuit of effective treatment. The INVICTA project provides treatment to military veterans and first responders who have experienced traumatic brain injuries. The inaugural launch of the INVICTA Gala was filled with familiar faces and warm support from not only professionals in their respective fields, but also the community at large. Over the past year, the INVICTA project has treated 12 service members and have 5 scheduled to attend before the gala, thanks to our incredible supporters. My goal is to raise funds to support 24 veterans and first responders this year. Please join our team in helping us achieve this goal. We would love for you to attend our next gala on May 3rd to experience the amazing support.
All right, so we got a mixed crowd. Some of you are chiropractors, some of you are financiers, some of you are family members. We've got people here in the regenerative medicine space. The intent is to share a little bit of my knowledge as it relates to chiropractic, discuss the opportunities to collaborate and improve your practice, and answer some questions. So ultimately, I'll tell a couple stories, but what I'm really looking for is your questions. I want to try and answer whatever I can for you that might relate to your situation, whether it's as a chiropractor, as a physical therapy assistant, as a CA. So Dr. Bill Morgan, most of you know. Bill and I have worked together for over 25 years. Bill, Terrence Keeney and I worked at Walter Reed, then called Bethesda Naval Hospital, all of the 2000s and a great part of the 2010s. In that process, we collaborated on patients daily. I didn't always believe in chiropractic. In fact, as I went through medical school, the system doesn't really teach you about chiropractic. They don't talk about it. It isn't something that we discuss. It isn't even an alternative in terms of treatment. So when I joined the Navy and began to practice neurosurgery, there was a fair amount of antipathy towards chiropractic in general. It wasn't an accepted alternative. It wasn't a known way to treat the patient. And for me, it wasn't until I got to Okinawa, Japan, and I reviewed the Department of Defense clinical practice guideline that I realized there's more to treating back pain than just physical therapy and neurosurgery. At that time, back pain was also treated by our orthopedic colleagues. That guideline, if any of you have seen it, is about 120 pages long. And if any of you have used a clinical practice guideline, you'll know that it's something you're supposed to work with while you're in the clinic. Patient comes in, says, I have XYZ problem. You should be able to open that guideline, look at it, and decide where on the guideline does the patient fit. What part of the process is this patient existing? Well, you can't do that at 120 pages. It just doesn't work. There's no way to take a 120-page document and work your way through that. So my objective was to set out and identify the most relevant features of that and pare that down into the smallest usable functional unit. And that ended up being about 6 pages. We've got an entire clinical practice guideline shrunk down to 6 pages, but it was important that it also be set up in a way so that the practitioners, who are usually GMOs, and a GMO is somebody who's just out of training, but it's important that the practitioners be capable of looking at this with almost no training, nothing other than coming right out of medical school, and being able to make a decision on their patient. So it had to outline the different red flags that, again, medical school wasn't great at teaching. Residency was, for me, but for most people who are general medical officers, right out of training, also called general practitioners in the civilian community, they didn't have a clue what those red flags were. So we had a small box we set aside. You couldn't go into great detail. You had to talk about things like cancers, infections, things that were real emergencies. So we set aside the red flags, and then we set up a cascade guideline that allowed the practitioners to walk through the treatment of a patient with low back pain. And it started with simple reduction in activity. And back in those days, we used to put patients at bed rest. We were still using 3 to 7 days of bed rest. Believe it or not, when I started medical school, we were using 30 days of bed rest to treat people with low back pain. So a decade later, we're still using 3 to 6 days of bed rest. Now today, none of us use bed rest for patients with back pain. It's completely out of bounds, and all you're really doing is deconditioning your patients. But I started this process identifying how do we give our practitioners the best possible tool to give them to work with their patients and improve their outcome with the least amount of risk. So increased efficacy, decreased exposure to risk. In using that process, I found that the Navy had left out, not the Navy, the Department of Defense and the VA had left out a ton of good alternatives. We basically had physical therapy, and you had pain management, and you had, and you had surgery. At that juncture, your guideline really shouldn't have been 120 pages. But over the years, I started working with the chiropractors. It was a tremendous relief for me to meet somebody who had a better understanding of spinal anatomy than I did. And as a neurosurgeon and a spine surgeon, we often think of ourselves as the spine masters. But compared to my colleagues, Terrence and Bill, I just didn't have the grasp that my chiropractic colleagues had. So once I started working with the chiropractors, and then I got to know the acupuncturists, and ultimately I got my own acupuncture certification, I realized that there's an entire cascade that we're leaving out. Well, that clinical practice guideline then led into the close collaboration with Bill and Terrence. We started that in 2004. In about 2005, Bill came up to the Department of Neurosurgery to join us for what was called Morning Report. In those days, Morning Report was really just 7 neurosurgeons sitting around a film box, looking at the films for the day's surgery with the residents giving a story about why they were getting their operation. They'd present the history, the physical, and any pertinent labs. So I invited Bill up because Bill and I had developed a routine where I would go see somebody in clinic, and if they had something that I thought he might be able to treat, I'd simply call him. He'd say, send him down, we'd get him taken care of. Same time, he'd send patients up to me, and if they had a hot disc or something like a foot drop, and we get them taken care of right away. So Bill comes into Morning Report, and my neurosurgical colleagues looked at me and said, well, wait, hold, what is this guy doing here? And I said, well, he's a colleague. He helps us establish the better care of spine patients. And they're like, well, he's a chiropractor. Those guys just break necks. They're going to hurt somebody. And that belief is not new. And it's improved over the last 25 years, but it hasn't gone away. So I fully appreciate what the chiropractic community has to deal with, and one of the reasons I'm here is because I think that's an important barrier to take down. So Bill joins us for Morning Report, and over the years, we had come to rely on Bill. We began to turn to Bill and say, is this something that you could help us with? And he became an integral part of the neurosurgery Morning Report. And he came to Morning Report for years up there. He and I continued to share that relationship until he left to come to Parker. And what we noted is probably once a day, and sometimes twice a day, he and I would speak, Terry and I would speak, and patients would be exchanged in one direction or another. And that collaboration generated an exceedingly valuable input for our patients who, in most cases, managed to avoid an operation that they would have otherwise been subject to unnecessarily. Because in our world, you come to the neurosurgery clinic, if you've got a hot disc or you've got a radiculopathy with lateral recess stenosis, you're getting an operation. Bill didn't always have the answer. And I know that chiropractors here don't always have the answer, but the opportunity to interact and share the discussion and begin to say, okay, where do you think the alternatives might lie? Not only helped us rewrite that clinical practice guideline, but it helped us point out to one another where the patient should go next. So I'm going to point out that my friend Jim David over here has a mic, and if you guys have questions along the way, just raise your hand. We're going to try to get those answered. I might stand up here in a minute. We're probably going to get Richard Harris to ask a question. He's not paying attention, but he doesn't know that yet. So I think the key when developing a collaboration in your community, if you are not, so we got a handful of chiropractors. How many of you work closely with a spine surgeon? 1, 2, 3. So a handful of you work closely with spine surgeons. If you're not doing that, you need to. There's enough antipathy out there that having somebody on your side is going to save you when it comes to questions about whether or not there's somebody that should have been treated. And at this juncture, if you're not regularly collaborating with them, and what I mean by that is not once a month, but regular phone calls or weekly sessions where you take cases and you share them and you ask, what are your thoughts on this, or what's your differential diagnosis list, is going to help sharpen your process, but more importantly, it's going to enhance the way that they care for the patients that you ultimately refer them. That process can lead to an increased patient flow. There's probably not much that's going to give you a better patient flow. You can advertise, you can market, you can even work with primary care doctors, but in reality, spine problems are going to go through a spine surgeon. So if you want a really good patient flow, get a handful of spine surgeons and tell them that you're willing to work with them on all their patients. Now, where does the value come in? The value begins when you know what their process is to obtain pre-authorization if they have to do it. Most people take insurance these days. If you have to do a pre-authorization, there's a list of steps that the patients have to go through. And most of us have to do it. How many of you guys take insurance? No? Some of you? So in the process, the insurance companies will require certain steps to be fulfilled and failed. So if you haven't taken those steps, they're simply going to deny your request. In our world, sometimes they deny it after we've provided the care. So we've done a big surgery, we send the bill in, and they're like, nope, we're not paying you at all. It's valuable for the surgeons if that care gets taken care of and well documented. Now, it's his or her job to get that done. However, to make your practice valuable, identify what those needs are and say, I can make those happen. I can get those taken care of, and make sure that you send the patients that you have already lined up for surgical intervention teed up so that you know what those are. And that's an easy opening discussion. I'm going to pause for a second, see if anybody has any questions about collaboration and where we want to go and what we want to do. I see a sort of a question lining up. So the question has to do with VA access, and I think you're describing hypermobile patients.
100% people that have had, you've got a gentleman that, you know, his favorite pastime is to shoot long distance. Like you can imagine on his grandstand, he gets out the next day, he's like confused as he can't even like how he goes shoot.
Right, right. So it's a little bit of a two-part question. Part of it is how do we get these patients access to the VA? And my friend there, Terry, might have a better response. Since he works in the VA system, getting access to that system is very complicated. For people who aren't already in the system. Now, if you have somebody with the military ID.
Yes, no, it's full access. I've literally tried to get the physicians to get out to a spinal surgeon, but it just seems to go nowhere.
Got it. So that's something I'm going to ask you to connect with Terry about in terms of getting to the VA, because honestly, getting somebody moved outside the VA is a problem, and it's also regionally controlled. So the VA, my understanding, I don't work in the VA. I get my care there sometimes, but I don't work there. And although Walter Reed provides VA level care, sending somebody to the outside is much different at Walter Reed than it would be at a regional VA. What VA are you at?
So the local one is in the localized portion of Montana.
Okay. What? Okay. So Montana.
Yeah, Kalispell.
Okay. And probably has basic services, no surgery.
Neurosurgeon, and all the way down to Salt Lake City, there's actually a neurosurgeon that I've tried to refer out to, but they're so busy, they're just becoming
Right. So, and that's another tricky issue. So for one of the things I'd be careful about is atlantoaxial or craniocervical instability patients, which we'll go into next, because that's actually where our practice focuses, are quite dangerous. And if they're managed improperly, then they end up at our practice damaged, and unscrewing that is often harder than fixing it in the first place. I think the key to that consultation is starting out with the idea that I have a patient who has impairment, and just list history is important, but not as important as saying, I have the following problems. Now, oftentimes the craniocervical and the atlantoaxial patients, it overlaps with many other issues. And unfortunately, they often don't see the brainstem problem. They look at it as, well, maybe it's a vestibular problem, or you have POTS because of something else, or you've got any other of the long list of problems. But if you put that package together and connect the dots, your only real answer is to say, this is what I have. And if you pull my name up, you'll find most of the good papers. Dr. Henderson and I are on the last decade's worth of papers that put those together. So you can just say, here's the references, and I need this patient seen for potential stabilization. Now, in the meantime, reminding the patients not to aggravate it, wearing their cervical collars. I'm a big believer they can still be adjusted, they can still be taken care of as long as the practitioner is experienced in taking care of a hypermobile or ligamentous laxity patient. And I separate those two because some of them are traumatically lax and some of them are congenitally lax.
Some of that, to me, I've got two patients that are both. I've got one that's so short, Ellis down low, very, you can literally, like, it's the most amazing thing.
Okay.
And it was one of those moments where anytime he looks down, it's very much a risk of him getting loose. And I have him wearing flak jackets so that he has to be like this the entire time. He mows the lawn with a flak jacket. It's comical, but it's the only thing that works.
So for those who couldn't hear, what he was saying is he has at least one patient that's definitely an EDS or Ehlers-Danlos patient. And Ehlers-Danlos, for those of you who don't know, is a connective tissue disorder that yields a ligamentous laxity of the upper cervical spine, which can be devastating. And he has the patient wear what he calls a flak jacket. Is it just a jacket, or do you wear a cervical collar?
No, I have not tried a cervical collar because I think he feels personally disabled and he won't do it. But his flak jacket, he'll wear it because it's a psychological barrier.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So he's working around some what sounds like a little bit of PTSD or maybe some psycho-emotional issues. And I think you. And do you adjust this person?
Hell no. Absolutely
Okay.
not.
Okay. So we've had literally hundreds of patients with hypermobility successfully adjusted, and I'm not suggesting that you do it, and I think that's appropriate. I think that there's a lot of adjustments that you could make that might give him help. You could probably go a little lower, at least make sure that his base is set and stable. Do the things that you guys do that I don't do, right? But let's talk for a little bit about the Ehlers-Danlos population, because it's a rough population, and unfortunately I'm going to sit. So the EDS population, or Ehlers-Danlos, is a very small population, but unusually represented in the illness community. So while they make up 0.6% of the general population, they will make up a much larger percentage of elite athletes or CEOs or people like that, which doesn't seem to make sense, except that there's some genetic modification going on. So my suspicion is that it's a evolutionary change that's taking place, where cognitively they have a higher capacity, physiologically they have a higher capacity right until they're damaged. And then once they're damaged, they have no capacity. And by damaged, I mean a common cold, a flu shot, a small trauma, and then you put them at bed rest, and now they become deconditioned. The deconditioning in these patients is devastating. They don't have a good ligamentous system to hold them up. And so as a result, if you take away their muscular tone, they have nothing. And they begin to slide, and they begin to get symptoms, often ribs, shoulders, elbows. They'll show up in our clinic when they have hypermobility in their cervical spine, specifically the craniocervical junction. And those, as our colleague pointed out, really can be devastating. Some of these patients come to us in stretchers or wheelchairs. And some people don't know they have it. Some people don't even know they have a craniocervical instability. For the most part, by the time they reach us, they need an operation. And the operation for that group is a stabilization. It's a fusion that's either occiput to 1-2 or C1 and C2 together. But there are a number of techniques that can be utilized for these people to keep them from having to have that operation. There's a way to take them and treat them and recondition them. We've been successfully coaching some of these patients back into fitness, but they've got to be warned ahead of time not to go to the extremes that they used to. A lot of our patients have been Olympic athletes, they've been NCAA champions, they've been national champions, and they're not used to running at a slow speed. So unfortunately, when they get damaged and you give them permission, BJ, there's a seat up here, buddy. When you give them permission to go back to operating, when you give them permission to go back to exercising, then sometimes they take the bridles off and they go nuts, and that's not safe either. So you got to warn them that when they've been deconditioned, returning to activity can be really dangerous. So they need an element of coaching. They need an element of reduced, or I would call graded integration of activity, so that they are not putting themselves at risk. But they can all undergo the same types of therapies that the rest of the patients can go. They just need a higher level of scrutiny between treatments and somebody to monitor that progression. In most cases, a chiropractor is perfectly positioned to do that. He or she can monitor not only the stability of the cervical spine, but because of the extensive training that this community has in the neurologic exam, you're watching for the features that may illustrate themselves in excessive motion at C1 and C2. Let me stop there. Did we cover your patients? Yeah, sure. Should just have you have a, come in, have a seat. Yeah.
From an experience perspective.
Yeah, so the question is about the use of Benadryl. Sorry, Jerry. The question is about the use of Benadryl in the EDS patients in general. And we should back up a little bit because this population frequently illustrates a mast cell response. So, and mast cell has flushing, urticaria, agitation, usually ocular symptoms. But it probably also impacts the ligaments and can cause, so for example, many of these patients have tethered cord, right? So a tethering of the spinal cord. If you have an inflammatory response that is generalized and the filum terminale is inflamed and it's already tight, so a small amount of tightening can then generate tethered cord symptoms. So patients who were otherwise asymptomatic but had a tethered cord, slightly shortened filum terminale, will now become symptomatic from the mast cell alone, probably, right? At this point, it's conjecture. We've discussed it. There's no randomized controlled trials to prove this. There may not ever be a way to do it. We send a sample of it, but there's nothing really in it. There's not a lot of eosinophils in it. There's no way to prove that it's the inflammation that's causing this. But his question was about whether or not you could use Benadryl on these patients, or whether it is a histamine response. And the exact mechanism that it functions through is not entirely known for these patients, right? Why they get such a great response from it, it's unusually effective in these patients. And we have patients that take 100 milligrams a day, which is a massive dose of Benadryl. But so I can't tell you that, and I don't know that answer. But it's a wonderful question. And there is a handful of other things that people say, well, I use this, why does this work? I'm not sure either. But there's so few people currently focusing on just these patients that getting that answer, I think, is going to be pretty tough. Other questions? Okay, great, super. So we're going to move on from the hypermobility patients and maybe talk a little bit about the malpractice risks or the exposure risks that often are encountered by the community. I do some work for Wicker Smith, one of the legal firms that actually spoke here yesterday morning. And John Floyd gave a wonderful talk, if anybody was in that. And John talked about how to protect yourself. And I don't want to rebeat that horn, but I think it's relatively important from, I'm often called to comment on causation, right? What caused this? I think when you begin to see a patient, it's critically important that you start by identifying how they feel at the time. And you follow that up by documenting the history and state in there whether you do or don't have concerns that they may have a vertebral artery dissection or even potential stroke. Now, those are all sort of big categories, and I think it's easy to sort of step back and say you should comment on that. But from your perspective, you have to begin with the end in mind, which is, I want to prove that I'm giving a treatment to this patient that I've deemed to be safe and relevant. In order to do that, you just need to make a couple comments. What was the onset of the problem? Where's the problem exists? And what's the severity of the problem? Somebody who has severe onset of left-sided neck pain, he's got vertigo, dizziness, slurring of their speech, you probably don't want to do the adjustment because those can all be signs of a stroke or a vertebral artery dissection. I think working your way through that process is relatively important in the chart. It doesn't take long, but it's got to be detailed enough so that you keep yourself out of trouble. from the causation side, I don't run into a whole lot of situations where that hasn't been well documented. Most people have put something in the chart, and now they just, whoever's bringing the suit generally is just trying to say, hey, I'm hurt and somebody should be responsible for that. Does anybody have any documentation questions or concerns about things that have to do with the medical legal stuff? We got a whole ton of opportunity here. So last, was it, I think it was last Vegas or maybe it was last Orlando, we did a nice talk on spinal stenosis. And it's one of my favorite things to do with Bill. Bill and I will get on stage and do a sort of a dog and pony show. Is that here? Was that? I think that was here. Spinal stenosis is a problem as you age, and as you get into the 50s, everybody's got an element of stenosis. And stenosis is common with aging. There's a series of factors. I think that the way we treat our spine is the leading contributor to that. The way I'm sitting right now is probably terrible. I don't think anybody out there is sitting great. They're all contributing to the way that that ligament, which is the ultimate culprit, the majority of the culprit for stenosis, that ligament hypertrophies. And that hypertrophy then leads to the narrowing of the canal. And just as a brief review, you've got the ligamentum flavum in the back, and you've got the posterior longitudinal ligament in the front. Now, you got the facet capsules bilaterally, and facet arthropathy is a big problem for lateral recess stenosis, and that'll give you the radiculopathy that you run into. And right now, we're focused mainly on the lumbar spine. And those can all be dealt with better before the patient gets to the operating theater. Now, Bill and I somewhat disagree on the ways to do this. There are some therapies where you stretch the lumbar spine and you flex them to pull the pressure off of their nerves. But I believe the right answer is to train the patient to be in a more collimated or even slightly lordotic position as much as possible and avoid that flexion, because the flexion is what's causing the sclerosis of that ligamentum flavum. Now you're going to add into it the oxidation and the chemical exposures. All those have contributory impact. But in the end, what you'd really like to do is stop that strain. It's the same as a callus on your foot. You know, most of us have some form of a callus somewhere in our body. Usually it's on our feet. That callus is formed by the way your foot is impacted by the environment, most often your shoe. You stop that impact, you eliminate the irritation, and the callus goes away. Now, my wife would say they use that cheese grater thing at the, at the pedicurist. I don't really care for that. But you can't, while the mild procedure is what the equivalent for us, right? Anybody familiar with the mild procedure? Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar, the mild is a procedure where they percutaneously run the equivalent of a cheese grater into your spinal canal, and they just cut off some of your ligamentum flavum. It's a process, and it's much more complex than what I'm making it out to sound like. It's not without risk. It's a great idea. I think in the future we'll be doing that with lasers or something else, but I'd much rather not have the patient have it done at all. And again, the right answer is, how do we fix their posture? In today's world, the person that should be doing that is their chiropractor. And I'm delighted to hear, as we hear the lectures, that we're still teaching the patients, not just correcting them and adjusting them. Most of our patients that I send out to chiropractors say to me, I've never had anybody spend that much time with me. I've never had anybody tell me how I'm walking wrong. I've never had anybody adjust my leg or assess my leg lengths and make an adjustment. You know, Bill did that for us in, 14 years ago or something, and a couple millimeter shoe lift. Suddenly, there's a pain differential and improvement in low back pain. and neck pain. So the idea that we still continue to adjust and I don't mean physically adjust, but teach and adjust the posture on our patients isn't lost on me. And more importantly, it shouldn't be lost on you about the idea that you can prevent stenosis in the future if you're making sure to say to your patients that flexed posture has to go away. We've got to eliminate flexion. We've got to eliminate the strain across the ligament of flavum. That has to stop if you expect to not have claudication and stenosis in your 60s and your 70s. Now, from an operative point of view, lots of people ask, what can I do on your patient? Every surgeon is different. So when you develop that relationship with your local spine surgeon, you need to talk to them about how they want to do it. But there's no magic. Once we've done the surgery, there's nothing that you should be capable of doing that was going to hurt them. If you're doing an adjustment so hard that it disrupts a surgical intervention, I didn't do my surgery right. It isn't, there's nothing there that you're going to be able to manually break. It doesn't work that way. In 90% of cases, it's a decompression anyway, which means we've just taken some structures away. And in a handful of cases, there's a titanium screw, maybe a rod, maybe a cage. But if those structures, those man-made structures, can't handle the impact of even the most severe adjustment, they're probably not properly done. Now, I reserve the right to review that, right? Because it's possible somebody uses a small rod, older screw, snaps the head. But this is titanium. Unless you're using a shear cutter, you're not breaking that rod. Now, anybody ever break a paper clip? Yeah, everybody, right? So you break a paper clip by rotating it multiple times. There's nobody in this audience, I will give you a $100 bill if you can pull a paper clip out and snap it in one move. It doesn't work that way. When you break a paper clip, you got to rotate it, you make it weak, and then it snaps. And it snaps very easily. So when your patients have rods or screws that are snapped, it's not because of playing a round of hoops that day. It's not because Aunt Jane, pulled the chair out and Billy hit the floor. It isn't because the dog yanked you over with the leash. It's because of repeated motion. And most often it's because the fusion that was supposed to set up and take place didn't take place in time. And the lifespan of that instrumentation didn't outlast the speed of the growth of the fusion. Any thoughts, questions, or concerns on spinal stenosis or instrumentation or postoperative care? Come on. So he asked the question about the mild procedure and the fact that was very popular for a while. It's fallen out of favor. It's come back occasionally. Every couple of years I hear people promoting it again. And my suspicion, and I don't mean to sound jaded, but my suspicion is that it has to do with the new reimbursement coding program, right? I'm fairly convinced that when things like that happen, it's because they found a new way to code it. It's been renamed, and now it's getting reimbursed again. And don't get me wrong, we, for the most part, allopaths want to do what's right for people, just like chiropractors do, and just like osteopaths. But the trend follows the money. We know that the trend followed fusions for years, trends followed instrumentation for years, and those numbers went up. So I don't know exactly why the mild procedure became so popular and then went away. It was done mostly by my pain management peers, which do a marvelous job at taking care of the patients. And it was a really nicely reimbursing program for people in that sphere, as I understand it. I never did them, so I don't know for sure. The closest we ever got was we would do indirect decompression with what was called the Aspen or X-stop. Most people probably remember the X-stop, the little interspinous spacer. Now, Aspen technically is the interlaminar spacer, but those take the spinous processes and pull them apart. So what you're doing is you're generating local flexion at, say, L4-5. And that local flexion then takes the previously hypertrophied and irritated and inflamed ligament flavum, and you're putting it slightly on stretch. And when you do that, your canal gets bigger. The downside is the long-term outcome is you've now got a slightly tilted vertebral body at 4, and 3 has to make up for that. And most patients don't notice it even for a couple years, but I can't believe that long-term there isn't an outcome. It might be. So his question is, how often do we see anterior cord irritation yielding sympathetic symptoms? Yes. Is that accurate? Okay, so let's be fair, and I'm going to do for you what I do with my patients. I ask them not to use labels. So the only thing there I would change is be specific with which sympathetic symptoms you're talking about.
Oftentimes shivering, 2 hours.
Yeah, so his patient has shivering episodes where her temperature will spike.
Yeah.
Accurate? Over short periods of time. What are we talking about? Minutes?
Usually the shivering will happen in about 2 to 3 minute episodes.
Okay.
And she does, so she's a jiu-jitsu person, and so she oftentimes...
Okay, and so he said that they've taken her off her medications, but she continues to have the episodes. Now, did you say she does jujitsu?
Correct, she's a purple belt, she's a badass, but it's just one of those moments where I was like, all right, so no more neck pulls, no more neck cranks, and it is what it is. But for now, she does have quite a bit of some laxity. She physically, I forced an MRI to be done. There's quite a bit of anterior cord pressure.
So he's identifying that she does have ligamentous laxity. Now, you've used a flexion MRI, flexion extension MRI. Have you done digital flexion extension?
I have.
Okay.
And I actually did it just through X-ray. I would love to purchase one of their DDR systems.
Right.
That allows for like motion. I'm a little weary of the DMX from a fluoroscopic perspective and diagnostic, but I'm not a radiologist, so there you go.
Okay. So we talked, he mentioned that he's done it with MR, but not necessarily with digital, with fluoroscopic assessment. And that's where I would go next. Where do you, on the MRI, where's is it a full stenosis or just an anterior compression?
Only anterior compression due to the ligament laxity and C3, C4.
Okay. So she's got a kyphotic angle at 3-4. So so what we're getting at is she has a C3-4 anterior angulation. Does she have trouble breathing or feeling like she's taking a breath?
100%.
Okay, right. So that we see. People that have anterior irritation of the cord at 3, 4, not usually all the way down to 5, but 3 and 4, have dysfunction with their respiratory cycling. We've not seen consistently the shivering. I wouldn't be shocked if it's there, but there haven't been enough patients come through that says that that's there. What we do know is if patients say they have no other cause and they have, I feel like I can't get a deep breath, or sometimes I just feel like I'm out of breath. They have successfully responded to anterior stabilization. And usually what we'll do is not only stand that 2-3 junction up, but take that disc out and make sure that there's nothing in the back. But those patients usually respond well to that. Now, in your particular case, I'd probably rest her in a collar and see if she goes without, first plain film without the collar, use the collar, see if you can get that to stand up just a degree or two, try her in the collar and see if you make any headway or see if you get a response. I'm a huge fan of collar trials. I like putting patients in collars and seeing if they respond. To me, that helps me identify whether or not the stabilization, and usually for us it's 1-2 or occiput 1-2, is going to yield some headway. If they wear a collar and they get zero response, I'm really hesitant to talk about operative intervention. Now, we've done it, and it's been very successful. But for me, my colleague's been doing this 20 more years than I have, and he's sort of like somebody with a divining rod can go, oh, yes, this is that. Like, okay, I find that hard to prove sometimes. But when you wear a collar, your responses get better and you can see the anatomic improvement, and then you take the collar off and the response now gets worse and you see the anatomic decline. To me, that's good evidence that you should move forward with a form of stabilization. Or, I don't have a problem with prolotherapy. Prolotherapy is a really nice option for patients like that to say, I don't think I want the operation. 3-4 is a little tough to do the procedure at, but we do it. But if somebody said, hey, are there any alternatives? I'm like, yeah, try prolotherapy. We've got a guy here in the audience that's involved in regenerative medicine, and I think that's on the forefront. Ultimately, patients will be getting stem cells in there. We get that disc space filled back up, and they won't need that operation at all. Yep, sure, absolutely. Speaking of that, so the stem cell topic is a really good one, and I do think that we're at one of those places where, all right, bud, got you your limit, didn't we? We're probably at a break point in healthcare where stem cells are going to be required if we want to continue to make forward motion. One of the people in the audience works with the Global Alliance for Regenerative Medicine, and the chances that we are going to have a long-term impact by that is probably 99 to 100%. During our lifetimes, we will be treating patients on a regular basis with regenerative medicine. So it is certainly something that you should begin to know something about. You should be prepared to talk to your patients about. And at the same time, I think there's new alternatives to begin to integrate that as part of your practice. I don't think that it's in the spine world here currently. It is outside the United States. But, and that's our cue for questions, but we've been doing those the whole time, so it doesn't matter. But regenerative medicine is probably the wave of the future for interventional healthcare. I don't think it's going to ever replace what we do to our patients in chiropractic, but it will certainly help those people who have been getting operations. So I'm going to stop and see if there's any general questions. I hope this has been beneficial for those of you who decided to stop by. DJ, it's great to see you. Anybody have any other last minute questions before we wrap it up? Terrence. So Terrence's question is about stellate ganglion block. I do not do those, but I do know that we've had a handful of patients who've gone out, had them done, come back and had great results. So I would, my personal experience with patients who've had stellate ganglion blocks is that it gives them tremendous relief. Now, I'm not involved in the selection of those patients. I'm not involved in the performance of those blocks. So I can't speak to the literature on it, and I don't do them enough to, or I don't do them at all. I can't speak to any of that, but I know the patients who we've sent out to have them done, who've come back and said, feel great. Now, long-term follow-up, don't know, couldn't tell you. But it's certainly, a lot of you will know that my belief is that the less invasive it is, the more we should try it. And I'd much rather have a stellate ganglion block than some of the other bigger things that people are talking about today, big operations, implants, things like that. So I'd certainly do that first. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. And I'm going to wrap that up so that our guys can get the stage back. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for being here, man. This is awesome. Thank you. So your talk on AI that we just listened to, I mean, it was fantastic, but you were able to chunk down, like it is so much, right? When we hear about AI, there's so much, but you were able to chunk things down and make it palatable, digestible, and like the step-by-step process. I want to, like, if we can distill that down even more, I know, but we're gonna do our best, right? So we're gonna do our best. So I look at it as just what you said, like we can no longer ignore AI, like it's here to stay. What would you look at for docs as like, all right, these are some things you need to know as far as do's and don'ts in using AI for us with patients?
Yes, so when you're using actual patient information, be very careful. You still have to comply with HIPAA regulations, right? You can't be just uploading content, upload patient data into ChatGPT or anything. So just make sure that you're HIPAA compliant on that kind of thing. But I really like to simplify it as far as thinking of your business in 3 or 4 different buckets.
Okay.
You're trying to attract patients.
Yes.
You're trying to convert patients, care for patients, and retain patients.
Right. Yeah.
So in each of those areas, what AI is available, what tools are available to help you do that.
Perfect.
And sometimes we get confused with AI and automation. Like sometimes if automation can do it, great.
Right.
If AI is involved, okay, that's okay too.
Right.
But the idea is what tools are available to simplify these processes and what are the outcomes we're looking for.
So would you say that's one of those things that you look at for looking out for like AI overwhelm because of all those different categories like you were talking about?
Yeah, there's always going to be something new out there and you look at it and you're like, oh my goodness, look, you can do this. Mm-hmm. But how does that benefit your practice?
Yes.
If it doesn't, just because it's cool, it's there's too many things you need to focus on instead of spending time focused on things you don't.
Sure,
So,
yeah, because you can go deep right into this. So for practitioners, healthcare professionals out there looking at things like, all right, I'm looking at ChatGPT versus Claude versus Gronk, versus keep going down the line. If you were to kind of categorize them into, well, maybe use this more for this and this more for that, and this is how I've seen it be beneficial, because you're helping docs all over the place and different types of businesses and practices across the board for this. Like, from your experience, what do you see are some of the best places to plug and play that?
it really depends on what you're wanting to do. For a lot of like email correspondence, or let's say that you do need to write an email and you need it to have a certain flavor, Claude is one of the best at just sounding. It's almost like Claude's thinking. It understands what you're asking and it understands why.
Okay.
And so it'll say, hey, here's this, but have you considered this?
Yeah.
So it kind of puts a little more thought into it.
Okay.
So I really like that for some communication things.
Sure.
I said this earlier in the presentation. It's almost like ChatGPT is very clinical, and then Claude is a little more family practice. There's a little more heart in it at times.
Yeah.
And then Grok is more of the witty uncle. Okay. Right? It's going to be inappropriate at times. You know?
Like that.
But there's different ones. I mean, you even have Perplexity. You've got Gemini 2.0. There's a lot.
Okay.
So one of the things that you want to do is you can take a certain question, ask it in each of them. See which one you like.
See what kind of response.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. So for docs, I loved how you broke down we know using reels, using video, using that kind of thing, but maybe a doc is looking at like, I don't want to constantly be doing it because of time, or I just feel comfortable for whatever reason how would you explain for them in using AI to maximize that, to go from, all right, I know you don't want to do this, but how do we make that happen so it looks authentic and real and speaks to your audience?
Yeah, this is.
I know that's a big question.
Well, this is one of my favorite tips and tricks using AI. You want to get, one, clone your voice with 11 Labs.
Okay.
Use 11 Labs to
11
clone your
Labs.
voice, and then get a bunch of B-roll video. And B-roll video can be you at your desk on the computer, you standing at the front desk, talking with the CAs, having a good time. You want to show your personality. You doing, an exam with a patient, or even an adjustment, or just life in the office, life outside of the office. You with the kids, you at the park, you at the gym. Just videos of you. And then you use AI to come up with different topics. And then what you want to do, the prompt you want to use is, I need a 30-second dialogue only video script. If you say a video script, it's going to describe the video and what you should do here and there. But if you say, I need a dialogue only 30-second video script on XYZ, and then play around with it, polish it up, if it looks good, then your team, there are so many tools out there that you can just take those things right there and put them together to make good videos. I mean, CapCut will do it. You can use HeyGen. There's, I think it's NVIDIA. There's tons of them.
Okay.
But all you have to do is, you've already got the voiceover, you got the script, use the 11 Labs to put it in your voice. So now it's the doctor's voice saying everything, and the team is just taking B-roll video, and now you've got your voice, your videos, your content that you didn't have to do. And your team can kick these out a couple of times a week.
I mean, that one strategy, when you talked about that in the talk, I was like, that is amazing. Because we do a lot of
You've
videos.
always done tons of videos.
Yeah.
You've always been, you're doing videos on airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying anywhere I can, let's do some video, right? So to hear that and hear how we can leverage that, I'm like, man, for so many, this is a great way to do it. And for me, I'm like, oh, how can I plug that in and do that? I'm going to be testing that.
That's a great one. Yeah.
I love it. So that's for that. Let's step back, because I know some docs are just like, oh my gosh, AI is so overwhelming. And I know some people, it's just like, I don't even know where to go with this. Where would you go? Where would you use AI for something like, let's say with ChatGPT? Where do we want to start? And I know that's a very low-level question, but we've got people that all kinds of different usages of this.
So one of the first things we tell every office to do is, you want to create a patient profile. So get on ChatGPT, and you can get on the other ones too. It really doesn't matter which one you use, but you just want to ask it, create a patient profile for a chiropractic patient in this community, and then you want to ask it these questions. What are the pains and problems they're facing? What do they want? What do they not want? And what have they already tried? Okay. And it's going to give you an output into the psychographic of your ideal patient. Save it in a Google Doc, and anytime you go to do any kind of marketing, upload that first. Just copy and paste it and say, okay, we need an email campaign speaking to this person. Now you can also go a little bit deeper, and you can build these custom GPTs where you put that in there and it's already in there.
Yeah.
But even if you just have it in a file, that you can copy and paste it, say, hey, this is my ideal patient. I need video scripts speaking to this person, or I need a reactivation idea, for this person. All your marketing can speak to that exact person.
So with that, you're coming up with, like you said, your ideal patient. That's your avatar that we're speaking to, right? And then you're plugging actually that into, let's say, like you said, 11 Labs or something like that, to say, all right, 11 Labs, I need to come up with a script for this. This is my ideal patient, and it'll spit that back out for you.
No.
Okay.
Okay. You would put it in ChatGPT or Claude or one of those. 11 Labs isn't going to create content. 11 Labs will just use their voices for whatever content you get.
That you've already created from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
now there's some new things 11 Labs coming up with to do podcasts and things like that. But for the most part, you can you want to get your script from one of these other tools.
Where you've already come up with your ideal avatar.
And then 11 Labs will put it in your voice or put it in thousands of professional voices. You can pick a voice and then you can give it a dialect. There may be a voice you like, but you want it to sound Australian. You can give it an Australian accent in that particular voice. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I mean, just like,
oh, I know. When I first cloned my voice and was playing around with it, my wife got so upset. She's like, I don't believe anything anymore.
Right.
I just don't believe anything anymore. And how great is it? You're like, I never said that.
Right.
That was AI.
That was all AI.
I never said that. I never committed to doing the dishes. That was.
I don't know where you heard that. Okay, I want to ask you one more question, and then I want to see if there's any questions from the audience before we start to wrap it up and everything.
Sure.
But you talked about this AI chatbot receptionist.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been seeing some of the simplest uses for that you've seen? Okay, this is cool.
Yeah, I would say probably the most popular way we're seeing it being used is responding to ads.
Yeah.
Like somebody opts in from an ad, the AI can automatically engage with them. They can qualify them. You can train it to ask certain questions. If you take insurance in your office, you can have it ask, hey, real quick, let me ask you, what insurance do you have? Or if it's asking certain things, and you give it a personality, and then you also give it a knowledge base. These are basic questions. You can have it scrape your website and learn all kind of stuff. Once again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. It actually doesn't. It's better to give it limited information and keep it, just answer these type questions.
Okay.
That's great. You can do
That's
the
a good
same
tip.
thing. You can do the same thing putting it on your website to answer questions. Let's say that you do have a workshop that you're doing. You can actually take the transcript from your workshop and use it as a knowledge base for a chatbot.
Yeah.
And so if people have questions about that topic, it knows all the answers. There's so many things. You can build specific chatbots if you do have a workshop coming up on March 28th at 7 o'clock, and this is what we're going to be talking about. You train it, and then if people go to the website or whatever, they have questions about it, it knows, oh no, this is the address, this is the time, all this stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we probably have time for maybe one, maybe two questions. Do we have any questions from anybody in the audience? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
That's
the
a
question
great
is
question,
from the B-roll, right? Can you pull those from YouTube, or are you pulling those from your own? Is that right? Yeah. So you don't have to upload it; it's already there. Good.
Yeah. What we recommend is creating a Google Drive online that you're going to keep all the B-roll in.
Okay.
But if ideally you want to use videos, B-roll of you.
Yeah.
There are some B-roll things that you can purchase from these different places.
Sure.
Especially where we live in North Houston, there's some pretty cool B-roll we can get of flying over our town.
Yeah.
There are landmarks where it's our town that you may want to use in some videos. But ideally, you want B-roll of you, your family, your office.
Keeping it specific.
Specific to you.
Oh, the doctor that's in it just already happens to be on a YouTube channel?
Yeah, then you can definitely use anything like that, because you're not going to use the voice from the B-roll.
Just the B-roll.
And even if it looks like he's talking, if somebody's good at editing the videos, even some of the AI can make it look fine. Because a lot of times you're only going to use 2 to 3 seconds at a time before you change. So if you watch any TV show, it's normally 2 to 3 seconds before they change scenes.
Yeah.
In our minds, we think it's just one camera looking at things. But if you start paying attention, every 2 to 3 seconds, they're either zooming in, they're zooming out, they're cutting to another camera, because it keeps our attention. And so whenever we're watching these videos, a lot of times, every 2 seconds, there's something different. If you got a 6-second video, it seems like forever.
It's a long shot.
It is.
Yeah.
So
now it is.
Right.
Now
well,
it is.
and that's one of the things. TikTok changed everything.
Sure.
TikTok
TikTokification,
took
right?
our attention span, which was already short, and made it shorter. You know, if you don't grab them within the first two seconds, they're swiping to the next video.
Sure.
But great question.
Really. So, any other questions? We maybe have time for one more.
You got another one?
Yeah.
Come
Okay.
on.
So I want to make sure I repeat the question just so it picks up on camera. And the question was, can we have different avatars, right? Because you said you have different avatars for, let's say, like a VA patient, a PI patient, a wellness patient, whatever it is. How does that work? Is that
Same thing. Yep. Yeah, you could, we would just say, do the exact same thing that you did for like your general chiropractic patient. When you're asking ChatGPT, I need a patient profile for this. You would just say, I need a patient profile for a VA patient or for a neuropathy patient or whatever. Just get specific and just save those in different documents, titled, so it's easy to know which one they are. So, yeah,
different campaigns.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's great.
And this was fantastic. Like really,
Good.
this AI is one of those things that I think everyone is really interested in.
I know,
but it's almost kind of like, I don't know, can I step into that or should I, and I think the way that you broke it all down for everybody makes it palatable and digestible and easier to actually like say, okay, how do I step forward?
Hopefully actionable.
Yes.
Yes.
For
So,
sure.
Good.
So thanks,
Good.
man.
Very good.
Appreciate
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
At Parker University, learning goes beyond textbooks. We bridge the gap between the classroom and the clinic. It's about hands-on experience that'll prepare you to make a real impact in your field. Whether you're in healthcare, technology, or business, you'll gain skills that change lives. Parker University. Learn it here. Live it in your career.
My name is Chris May, and I am the ambassador for the INVICTA project. The INVICTA Gala is an event held to honor participants, celebrate recovery, and support the ongoing pursuit of effective treatment. The INVICTA project provides treatment to military veterans and first responders who have experienced traumatic brain injuries. The inaugural launch of the INVICTA Gala was filled with familiar faces and warm support from not only professionals in their respective fields, but also the community at large. Over the past year, the INVICTA project has treated 12 service members and have 5 scheduled to attend before the gala, thanks to our incredible supporters. My goal is to raise funds to support 24 veterans and first responders this year. Please join our team in helping us achieve this goal. We would love for you to attend our next gala on May 3rd to experience the amazing support.
you so much for agreeing to be here and doing this, because your topic on the bigness of chiropractic is one that I feel so many people need to hear, no matter if it's the doc, if it's the team, like whatever it is. Can you share with us just a little bit about, like, all right, this is some of the things that we're going to be talking about, and share that with us?
Yeah, thanks, Alex, for inviting me to speak this morning. I'm looking forward to presenting the bigness of chiropractic this afternoon at 2:30.
Yes.
And you know, that topic to me is so very important, because no matter what we do in chiropractic, if we remember our roots and whose shoulders we stand on, then we are stronger and better, and we can take it up to a higher level.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, chiropractic is celebrating its 130 years
It's amazing,
this year.
right?
So, and it started so simple.
Yes.
And it has grown to be dynamic, and it's going to be very soon explosive, because we will make America healthy again.
I love it.
And we're going to play a big part in that.
Yeah.
But I love the way chiropractic started with one man adjusting his janitor that had lost his hearing, and he was a magnetic healer. And he did an exam and realized there were some issues. And when he adjusted accidentally, then the hearing returned.
Yeah.
So that was in 1895. D.D. Palmer did that. And then Parker School of Chiropractic started 2 years later. And what I love is B.J. Palmer, that started that school, made a statement that you never know how far-reaching something you think, say, or do today can affect the lives of millions tomorrow.
Yes.
And look how it has exploded from one man, one adjustment. We today have 70,000 chiropractors in the United States. We have 48 chiropractic colleges around the world, 19 just here in the United States and Canada. And this is like a $30 billion industry now, serving patients. And then Dr. Jim came because he went to that Parker School of Chiropractic.
Yeah.
And he graduated in 1946. This is called the Parker Seminar, Parker University.
Right.
He is the gentleman, the doctor that got that all started. And I just love him because I spent much time with him when I was going through Parker. My stepdaughter graduated from Parker's charter class.
Oh, right.
And so I got to know Dr. Jim. I was really fortunate to learn from him and to serve with him. And Dr. Jim then, after he graduated, he went and returned back to Texas because he was grown up in Texas and he was a sickly child. He had asthma. And luckily his mother took him to a chiropractor and healed his asthma. And so God put a flame inside of him to go and become a chiropractor. So then he started, and he ended up with 18 chiropractic clinics in Texas. He bought himself an airplane, and he traveled from clinic to clinic and made sure that they were serving the people right and they were profitable.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
And so those doctors recommended to him then, well, why don't you start a seminar? We will come and speak to teach all the other chiropractors out there in the country how to be successful.
Yes.
So that's how Parker Seminar started in 1951. And it's been going strong ever since.
Ever since, right?
Yes.
It's amazing to see what they've
It
done
is
in that
just
period of time.
beautiful.
Right?
And Dr. Jim always said, he left us with the Parker principles, which
Sure.
are near and dear to our hearts.
Yes.
Like loving service, my first technique, and lather love lavishly over your patients and your practice.
Yes.
And your service is more important than making money, because money is always an exchange of services rendered.
Yeah.
So those principles, if they're kept alive in our lives and in our hearts, will change us to be better doctors and become healers.
Love it.
Yes.
So, I mean, everything that you're saying, like we talked about, is, when we started off, is important for docs to know, right, for us? Because I feel like if we don't know our past, it's hard to know where we are in our present to then understand where we can go in our future and what we need to do. You're going to be talking with the teams today,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
How important for docs out there, and for other docs out there, just looking at it and maybe they aren't quite sure about understanding the history and sharing the history with their team, because I share the history with my team.
Yeah.
How important do you believe that to be in our teams understanding the history of chiropractic in our profession?
Well, if you want to have passion for what you do, you need to know why you're doing what you do, and recognize and acknowledge and appreciate where it came from and where it has grown to. And that every staff member and every doctor is part of the bigness of chiropractic. and they can make it grow bigger, which will happen shortly.
Yes.
You know, and they can develop themselves to serve their patients better, because who they are will determine how well what they do works.
Yeah.
So the principles in their hearts and minds will make them better chiropractic assistants, better doctors, will give them a tool to grow with and to serve with.
Yeah. And patients can feel that, right?
They do. It's
They
like
can certainly feel.
they become a magnet.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
like when they go out and they go shopping or they're in the office with their smile, people want to be in that presence.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
It matters.
That matters to the patients mostly, because a lot of patients don't get the touch from the other doctors. They don't get the connection.
Certainly.
Make them realize that they're a spiritual being having a human experience,
Yes.
that they're mind, body, and soul.
Yes.
And I still say that chiropractic is one of the few professions that still treats the whole person.
It's good.
And many
good.
other professions, they're fragmented.
Yes.
You know, we still treat body, mind, and spirit.
Yes.
And the nervous system controls all other systems.
Everything.
And the innate intelligence that is expressed through the nervous system that gets improved and gets changed and gets healed when we adjust them.
That's right.
That's what life is all about.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I love that. So I love your passion, how it comes across. Like you can
Thank
tell
you.
that this is who you embody and who you are, and it just comes right out.
Yes, you know, I've
love
been
that.
in chiropractic 52 years.
52
I
years.
started
love
as
it.
an assistant, and then I married a chiropractor, and then I ran the office for 15 years, and then I went to Parker,
Yeah.
and then we had 3 children graduate from Parker,
Wow.
and then 2 granddaughters.
It's amazing.
So there is 6 Parker graduates in our family,
Wow.
and we're the first family of grandmother, son, and granddaughter that graduated from Parker.
Really?
3 generations. Yeah, it's
That's
so
amazing.
exciting. Yeah.
Yes. So it's in the blood.
It's in the blood and passing it on. If they, when they see what they can do with their lives and their hands and their heart, that's the life they choose.
Yes.
And what better life is there?
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Feel the same
And you
way.
have that passion too.
Oh,
Look at the
thank you.
light
Thank you.
that shines in your eyes.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah. Chiropractic has absolutely changed my life. Obviously changed yours
It
too,
has.
you know, with what you
know,
just talked about.
And it found me. It probably found you.
Absolutely.
And then that's when I found my destiny after
Yes.
chiropractic found me.
Yes.
So it's a great way to serve.
Oh, yeah.
And people are asking, when are you going to retire? And I said, well, why would I want to retire from
Right.
something I love,
Right.
right?
I'm doing what I love.
Yes.
Right? That's so good. So good. So what would you say is the main message for docs whenever they're like, okay, I'm listening to you, I'm hearing what you're saying. What are some of the things that they can share with their team? Just like some of the key points where they're like, okay, I can take that and I can use that and share that with my team. I know that's the whole story. I know. I'm really asking you to like,
Yes.
I know.
Well, one thing is important to have weekly staff meetings
Yes.
where you can address, like when we have our staff meetings, one week we do all the Parker principles. And we do all the Parker practices, suggestions, how we can make the practice better.
Nice.
And letting the staff know that they are a big part of this whole picture. And without them, we could not accomplish what we are accomplishing.
That's key.
Yes.
Empowering them, right?
Yes, and to get their minds and their hearts in the proper place and to go back to the basics. The basics is we are healers. We are adjusting people to let the nervous system express itself. People have so much trauma these days, micro trauma,
Sure.
major trauma. They're full of toxins, which
Yeah.
causes subluxations, which causes disease, which
Yeah.
makes people sick.
course.
And then Dr. Jim Parker used to say, they have stinking thinking.
thinking.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yes, and
good.
you know, and there's so much to it. I always refer to the mind as a garden.
Oh,
And
that's good.
Haven't been raised on a farm, I know. What you plant in the land will produce. It doesn't
Yes.
care what kind of seeds you put in there. Our minds are just like that.
Yeah.
So if we put good seeds in there, if we put seeds in there of success and love and helping others and certainty and all of that, then the garden will produce that.
Love it.
So if everybody realizes and is empowered by just watching what goes into their minds and what they allow to grow, that will, because that creates their lives.
Yeah.
Their actions depends then on what they think, and our actions create our character, and our character creates our destiny. So we can't blame anybody else for a lot of the things in our lives. We can take back the power and make the change and make the choices that are pleasing to God in my life.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So I just thank you for sharing and just pouring into everybody with this. This was fantastic and taking the time to do this. I know that you've been busy, so thank you so much.
You are welcome. I love it. And giving back to the students is very important, which we do through the World Congress of Women Chiropractors. We give scholarships and then paying it forward to others. After you've been in it for so long, what am I going to do with all this knowledge and this passion? I just give back and pay forward and take care of my patients. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
For asking me to come and speak. I just love it.
Well, your
keep
topic
the
is so
love
important.
alive, keep the flame alive, so we can deal with what we deal with every day in our practices.
That's it right there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. All right.
Your future starts now. At Parker University, we combine cutting-edge technology with top-tier education to prepare the next generation of health professionals. With hands-on experience and expert faculty by your side, you'll build the skills and confidence to make a real impact. Parker University. Learn it here, live it in every day.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David Klein. I am co-founder and COO of PayDC, Electronic Health Records Company. I'm also a certified professional coder and certified professional medical auditor. Today, I was going to talk to you a little bit about how to choose an electronic health record system, a electronic medical record system, or a practice management system. There's a lot of different ones out there, and there's some key things that I think providers should look for. And I'm talking to you not just as one of the founders of one, but also as a medical coder and auditor. And I do a lot of defense work for providers around the country, both from proactive audits and reactive audits, Medicare, fraud considerations, and other types of third-party recoupment efforts by payers. So what are you looking for in an EHR system? The first thing that I'm looking for is rock solid documentation. So I want to make sure that my documentation tells a story of how I cared for the patient. A lot of systems out there are more repetitive in nature, where you're repeating the same thing over and over again, kind of a copy and paste format. What you want your records to do is really help you tell that story, draw comparisons from visit to visit. That's one of the keys, is making sure that your documentation will determine how the patient was doing one visit versus the next visit, one exam versus the next exam, and actually provide some measurements. Incorporate things like long-term goals. I hear the term, same as last time. And that's not really a compliant way to do documentation. It's more of a copy and paste. I'm going to copy this visit, plug it into the next visit, and then what I'm going to do is just change a couple words here and there, or maybe randomize text. Those types of things are not considered compliant. Medicare has actually provided some flags out there that said, hey, you're not supposed to do this. This leads to copy and paste notes. So you want to make sure that your documentation really is rock solid. The other thing you want it to do is make sure that your documentation drives your billing. When you create a note, the claim is based on that. A lot of different providers add the codes after they do their documentation. The billing team will then add modifiers to the documentation. And what that does, it actually is billing based on reimbursement, not based on the documentation, which is how you need to do. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that your documentation is going to be not just compliant, but also affect proper reimbursement. So making sure that when you do your notes, that the claims or the codes are driven based on that documentation and the claim is generated based on that. Modifiers should be added at the time of the documentation because that's what's going to determine if a modifier is appropriately used. And then, of course, submission to the payer should be pretty seamless. You should be able to submit a claim, document the service, and the claim should go out just automatically. So that's something that you want to make sure and do. The second thing that your EHR should do is be efficient. Creating your notes is one thing. Doing a daily note should not take you 3, 4, 5 minutes to do. Reevaluations, initial evaluations, of course, it's going to take you longer to do that. But to do a daily note, to do a nice compliant daily note should take you 45 seconds to 90 seconds to do. And we're talking a comprehensive clinical note, not just a copy and paste record. The other thing that it should do is it should automatically sync with the billing. As soon as your note's done, the provider signs that, authenticates the record, and then of course the claim is automatically generated. Once that claim is generated, your system should allow you to send out that claim automatically to the payer. A lot of EHRs have clearinghouse integrated with them. Some of them you actually have to create a file and upload it. Obviously that's not quite as efficient, but it's okay as long as your documentation is the thing that's driving those claims. One of the third things that I always talk about is intelligence. Now there's different types of intelligence. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence when it comes to clinical records. Right now, there's not a lot of that in the EHR market. We actually use the term IHR, or intelligent health records, and that's what you want to do. When you create a claim, having simple things like coding edits built in. If you're going to use a code, 2 codes that require a modifier, the system should remind you, hey, you need to have these 2 codes bundle. You should have a modifier that gets appended to this before the claim's actually generated, because then you might think about, oh, do I have a diagnosis that supports this? Am I targeting a separate anatomic region if I'm doing, say, manual therapy along with the adjustment on the same visit? You want to make sure that your system will remind you, hey, you need to make sure that A, your documentation is correct, and B, that it's now time to add the modifier, and then C, the claim should be created based on that. That's real intelligence, allowing you to do that. And once you go through and get hung up by an edit, if you're trying to sign a note and it's flagging you for that, you get used to it. It trains the providers on how to appropriately document and then, of course, code, and they learn which services bundle and which ones don't. Another thing that's really important, for example, is time-based services. I see a lot of providers send out claims with time services like therapeutic exercise, ultrasound therapy, neuromuscular reeducation. All of those services require that the provider records how many minutes they spent performing that service. If those things aren't included in the documentation and you get a request for records, that insurance company is going to want all that money back. So one of the things that I really like to see in a system is if you try and sign off on a note and you don't include the necessary time for those time components, then it won't let you sign off on it. You can't authenticate it until that has been added, and the appropriate number of units are billed. And of course, that also needs to translate into the claim form. So those things are really important. Another thing, there's now, I think, 78,000 plus diagnosis codes, and they change every October the 1st. I see a lot of trends right now where the diagnosis codes either bundle together or providers are using what's called a truncated diagnosis code. In other words, it doesn't have enough digits to satisfy a valid ICD-10 code. So you want to make sure that the intelligence built into your electronic health records actually flags you when you're using, let's say, a deleted code. And it says, hey, that code's no longer valid, that diagnosis code's no longer valid. You have to change this before you send out that claim. A lot of systems don't do that. They don't update those ICD-10 codes. When you initially get it, yep, they preload your ICD-10 codes, but then after that, you're on your own. So in 5 years, you've got 5 years worth of changes that you have to keep on top of. You want to make sure that your intelligent health records keep up with that. And that's something that we really try and focus on, is making sure that providers that I work with, that they're understanding those diagnosis coding rules. I probably don't have to tell you this, but sending out a claim, getting a denial, and then trying to go back, correct the claim, adjust the notes and documentation, maybe change your diagnosis, change your coding, that takes a lot of time and effort to try and get reimbursed. And that's not something that you really want to focus on. So you want everything to go out as clean as possible. Scrub it at the documentation level, scrub it at the claim creation level, and then scrub it at the clearinghouse so it's scrubbed. Maybe you call it a triple scrub functionality. So that's something, that's the third thing that I look for. The last thing that I really think is important to look for in a intelligent health records company or any kind of EHR that you're looking at or practice management system, customer service. And that's really goes with any company you do business with. If you call them up and you can actually speak with someone, or you can send an email and they actually respond to your email, or you want to be able to have a chat, an online chat with a company and be able to get information. I think that's really important to make sure that you get that information. If you call and you're sitting on hold for hours and hours, or you leave a message and it's 5 days later that you get a call back, that's going to be problematic. That's going to make it so you're not able to do what you need to do. It's going to make it so your team's not able to do what they need to do. And sometimes you never even get a call back, so you have to do repetitive calls. So making sure that you have exceptional customer service, that's definitely something that you want to make sure and research on any company that you're going to be doing business with, especially when it comes to an electronic health record system, medical record system, or practice management system. Again, I like using the term IHR, intelligent health record system. That's what you really want to be focused on. All of those things help to make that intelligence. Again, my name is David Klein. I'm not only the founder of PayDC and COO, but I'm also a certified professional medical auditor, coder, and I do a lot of defense work around the country with providers. I work with a lot of different state associations in helping to make sure that providers not only get paid, but are able to keep that through both proactive auditing and reactive auditing. Of course, reactive auditing costs a little bit more because payers want to get money back. So thank you very much for your time today. I hope it was informative, and I hope you have a great rest of your show.